Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your award-winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast, and we return as we do throughout the summer with another of our feature shows here. Look, we've always got more content coming for you on Last Word on Spurs, and this particular feature edition is one we only do every 12 months. It's one in which it gives us an opportunity to review the whole of the Tottenham Hotspur first team squad, and quite essentially, who are you keeping? Who are you selling? Who are you loaning? And what does the future mean for those that are in that category of up for sale? Who's coming in? Who is going out? Deciding and letting you guys know their thoughts on this Last Word on Spurs is Lee McQueen is back in the house. Very quickly, let's go around the panel. Macca, how are you? Well?
Yeah, really good. Thanks, really good. This game is like the shag, marry, or throw off a cliff game, isn't it? That you used to play when you're back in the day. We're just going to be doing that with professional footballers tonight. So, right on.
I didn't tell Lee before I started. That's what Lee has to decide. Who wants to shag, marry, and avoid. But I was going to keep that one quiet. So Macca can decide that. Pat and Jamie can decide if they want to join in. Where is this show going? Don't worry. We're not going into a really dodgy area where it could be going. Joining us back on the show, we've got wonderful Patty, Tyrant. Pat, how are you, my man? You okay?
Yeah, good, man. What's up to everyone tuning in and watching this on the rerun? I'm good. This should be a fun one. Obviously, everything we say is our opinions. Don't take it to heart. Let's have fun. Let's chill out. Let's not take it too seriously. People do go a bit crazy during the transfer window. So let's just relax a bit. And yeah, I hope everyone's well. And I'm looking forward to this one. I really am.
Oh, man. The buzzword is there. It's taken less than a couple of minutes. Pat mentioned it transfers. It means this man is back over from the Daily Hotspur. Jamie Brown is back. Jay, how are you? You well?
I'm very, very good, Ricky. Yeah, looking forward to discussing people like Brandon Austin. No, obviously, probably stay away from him. No, it should be a good show. I'm looking forward to this one, obviously. Look, season's over, but still plenty to discuss. Obviously, plenty of work to be done to the squad. And looking forward to this one. Should be good.
Oh, man, mate. Lovely to have you join us. Jamie, just slightly starting to come back into the picture now as the season comes to an end and transfer season's rearing its head. I wonder why that is, I wonder. Listen, thank you so much for joining us. I will just want to encourage from the start, we want to say on this show, get involved in the comments if you can. That's both when we're live and off air. We're really intrigued to know on this show because it's going to really cast a different aspersion of opinions in terms of who we're going to want to keep, who we're going to want to sell, who we're going to want to bring in. We want to encourage those out there that are listening, watching the show from all corners in the world. Come and tune in. Drop us your opinions. Drop us your comments. Who do you want to see Spurs keep? Who do you want to see Spurs sell? Are you going to agree with this elite panel we've got here? Or do you have your own views, which you want to hear? So listen, thank you so much for that. Now listen, there's all different places we can start on this Last Word on Spurs in terms of how we're going to do this. So look, just to recap very, very quickly, you guys know the drill in terms of the season. It was a season that for Spurs, they lost Harry Kane on the eve of it. They battled through injury, they battled through suspension, not to mention a whole host of international absentees that was often at times in double figures, and yet ended the season in 5th place. Now, such is the nature of Spurs and the upheaval of it. The power men involved in this, and credit to, I've got to say, Luis Enrique for this image, will be the likes of Scott Munn, Daniel Levy, Johan Langer, of course, in there as well, and Rob McKenzie, who will be the decision makers in terms of what Spurs are going to do during the summer, whether they are going to keep, sell, loan the stars, and who Spurs are really targeting during this upcoming summer transfer window. It took less than a fortnight for Spurs' backroom staff to be already disrupted, of course, Angie's men that, let's be honest about it, in a very, I would say, unique circumstance that a manager comes in and ultimately walks in by himself and has a entourage put upon him that, let's be honest about it, he decided himself. It took him 21 days, Ange Postecoglou, to appoint his coaching staff as a whole. And already there is a missing man from what will return this summer with the news that Chris Davies has left his role as Ange Postecoglou's head coach to become Birmingham City's new manager. And said upon Chris departing the club, he's an outstanding individual. He's done some fantastic work with us along the last season. And I've said before that will attract attention. So there's no surprise to me that a club of Birmingham City's stature has shown an interest in him. And I'd like to thank Chris for all of his hard work and wish him all of the best. So guys, before we dive into the actual first team of players, I want to ask you, Lee, coming to you on the coaching staff, because Spurs are going to need to make a change. And we've heard Ali Gold, friend of the show, of course, Ali, already suggesting that Ange will look both internal and external to find the resources when it comes to the right candidate to replace Chris Davies' number 2. What, in your opinion, does that backroom staff member need to be, in your opinion? Very quickly, we've got a lot to get through. Give us a quick take on that.
I think it needs to be somebody that Ange really trusts, knows, trusts, and likes. I think that somebody that can obviously coach at this level. I think John Kennedy, I think is the man that he wanted to bring with him from Celtic, and he couldn't get him out last time around. So I think it might end up being John. Apologies to all Celtic fans as well, if that does happen. But that's football. That'll be a move up the chain essentially for John. What I would say, I can't remember their name, but I think that we've already had some backroom staff changes in the academy today with the Southampton ex-Southampton academy manager coming into the academy, so into the Tottenham Hotspur academy. I'm not sure if that was a rumour or confirmed, but I read that earlier. So yeah, be quite interesting to see how he jiggles that around. But yeah, set piece coach based on the amount of set pieces that we gave away. But as we all know, if we follow Ange and we've done our homework on Ange, that normally gets sorted out second season anyway. So let's see what happens there, mate.
Pat, coming to you, quick take on the coaching staff. What do you want to see change over the course of the summer? Will it just be the assistant manager? Do you want to see maybe even more of a change there for you?
Assistant manager and also a set piece coach coming in, a specialist, because we did struggle on set pieces, especially defensively. Offensively, we could also use some work to reinvigorate that. But yeah, that's it really. Nothing too drastic, and pretty much Ange's got it all flowing cohesively there. Of course, with our assistant head coach now going off to be a head coach, kudos to him. I hope he does well there. But yeah, just an assistant coach that Ange knows and trusts, and a set piece specialist that we could, also a defensive coach maybe, because defensively, we lacked in the clean sheet department. But yeah, nothing too crazy really.
Jay, coming over to you interestingly. Obviously, Ange said at the back end of the season, we need change. That means both internally and externally. He's referenced a number of times that it wouldn't just be the playing staff under review. It will be the coaching staff. On that basis alone, do you think it'll be more than just the assistant head coach changing at Spurs this summer?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the guys have mentioned it. Set piece coaches is something that we do desperately need. I mean, look, everyone knows our weaknesses from last season. And again, we saw the importance of a set piece coach under Antonio Conte. I mean, everyone remembers Gio Vaio. He was obviously fantastic, and we really picked up under him. And obviously, ever since we've lost him, we've looked a lot worse. So that's obviously something I would like to see us address. And obviously, as the guys mentioned already. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who we do get in as the assistant. Obviously, it's a good shout on screen, Robbie Keane. I think he's done really well where he was. Obviously, won the league in the team he was at. But yeah, it's just getting in an assistant really that knows the way that Ange plays and kind of can maybe give suggestions, because we know that Ange Postecoglou, after that first season, there was some brilliant parts of his game, but there were also maybe areas of weakness and areas where we do need to improve. So yeah, you need to get in someone who kind of knows and understands the way that Postecoglou wants to play, and then maybe can kind of give suggestions, because as I said, he probably does need to make some slight tweaks. So yes, it's going to be interesting to see who he gets. I was a little bit worried to see the assistant go. I think that losing someone that you do trust is obviously going to be difficult to replace him. But I think Ange is a good enough coach that I'm sure we'll find someone, and we'll continue to get better next season. So yeah, I'll say it's a concern, but we'll see. I'm sure we'll sort it out.
I wonder, Ricky, just quickly, I wonder if you were kind of pointing that little comment there to a Matty Wells or a Ryan Mason, given the fact that they are Tottenham through and through and got blue blood running through their veins, essentially blue and white blood, and the Arsenal Man City scenario. Yeah, when Ange came out after that game and said, "Oh, there's going to be some changes," is it because they were the guys? This is speculation, but they were the Tottenham through and through boys laughing the fact about, let's just throw this game. So maybe.
How would you feel, Lee, very quickly, if that news was actually turning out to be true, that number one, we'd see those guys depart, and not for that alleged reason, but ultimately there would be a change? And also on the other factor, Lee, how would you feel if you heard the news that, for example, Ryan Mason or Matty Wells were promoted to Ange's assistant? How do you think that would go down in the fan base?
Yeah, I think Ange, he sees him every day. He sees him literally every day, works him every day. Like I said right at the beginning, know, like, and trust. That is the most important elements. And if they're doing really well, and they do love the club. They are Spurs boys, right? At the end of the day, they come through the academy, both of them. This, some, parts of the fan base, they get frustrated with people. It almost seems like we can criticise one of our own even further or even harder because they are one of our own. Like, shouldn't kind of almost be like that. It's a little bit like, it's all right for you to criticise your mum, Ricky, but actually if I criticised her, that'd be terrible. And, you know, because she's your mum and she's not mine. See where I'm coming from? So it's kind of like, it's one of them. But I just think that, you know, I trust Ange in that. I mean, I know many don't, but I trust Ange in that. You know, at the end of the day, it wouldn't surprise me if it's John Kennedy. Somebody just, I think it was Toxic Headshot, said about maybe Wayne Burnett being promoted from the academy. He's done a fantastic job. You know, Wayne, a friend of the show as well. So, you know, the reality is if he comes up and he can do a fantastic job as well, see how it pans out. But I do agree with the boys, got to have a set-piece coach at some stage and sort them out because, you know, you're probably I'm looking at the points total last year, 66 points. You probably put another 12 points on that if we don't give away them set pieces. And that's, what's that, 78 points, mate?
Yeah, it is, like I say, an interesting, fascinating discussion on one, which I think, as we've seen, Chelsea have forced upon a manager, a set-piece coach. Obviously, Enzo Maresca's walked into a job and seen there's one that's been employed even before he's got through the door, although Chelsea in itself are an interesting case. But again, with Spurs, it'll be interesting what, of course, they do ahead, of course, of the new season. You'd imagine it's got to be reserved and sorted firmly quickly because ultimately those players do return very shortly to pre-season and has got to have that number 2 there. So we'll see how that pans out. We are going to go straight in to the audit and discuss Spurs' 2 goalkeepers. Now, again, it's worth us obviously pointing out there that this will be based on every player that has made a first-team appearance for Spurs over the course of the last 12 months. So Guillermo Vicario, look, a very strong first season for the club when you take anything into account. It was a goalkeeper that came from a different league where, look, he wasn't used to playing much of his feet. He had obviously a lot more short passing that we had been used to, obviously, during his time before he came to Spurs. He was assured, definitely in the opening part of the season. He was nominated for most months for the Premier League Save of the Month award, given the nature of how many saves he had to make across the season. There was, of course, that rocky period in between, you'd say, New Year to then earlier in that year where ultimately he was being targeted from set pieces, and Spurs deployed a blocker towards the middle part of the season, given that. I think it's fair to say he deserved more than 7 clean sheets, but that is what he got as a whole, given the nature of what was in front of him. Fraser Forster, just the 1 appearance for Spurs across the season, and that was in the Carabao Cup exit to Fulham. I know he was very criticised for the nature of his stance during that penalty shootout, which, as you guys are probably aware by now, I have tried to forget. And I can see Jamie in the background going, are we really judging him on this 1 appearance based on a penalty shootout? So look, I think it's fair to say that Fraser Forster is a different kind of goalkeeper to Guillermo Vicario. There's no doubt about that in terms of his stature, in terms of his posture as well, and how he plays as a goalkeeper. So this should be a very easy one on Guillermo Vicario. I think if any of you guys disagree, you tell me, but I think we're all going to be saying we're going to keep Guillermo Vicario for next season. I can see a nod across the panel. We're saying a yes, so that's a yes from everybody on keeping Guillermo Vicario. With Fraser Forster, I wonder where everybody's at on that one. For me, I think Spurs need to be looking at a genuine number 2. I think Forster has been an able, capable backup, but I think for the long term in the way Spurs want to play under Ange Postecoglou, I don't think he fits the bill. Lee, do you agree, disagree? Will Fraser Forster be a man you'll be looking to keep, sell, or loan in this upcoming summer transfer window?
No, it wouldn't be a loan. I think the only reason why, again, if we're doing this based on me and my thoughts, rather than what I think the club are going to do, because that is slightly different. For me, I would give Big Fraser a handshake and say, thank you very much, fella. And I'd send him on his way. And I would actually put, I know we talked about Brandon Austin in the green room and Jamie mentioned about it, but I'd actually give one of the youngsters a bump up to number 2. Like what I wouldn't be doing for sure is going out and spending, even though, I mean, Vicario is only, 17 million or whatever. He was a cheap option. So I wouldn't be going out and spending 15, 20 million on a backup goalkeeper. I think Forster ticks some boxes in terms of homegrown and that type of stuff, which is another major issue that, you know, now if we get into all of that as well for every single player, we're going to be here all night. So I just think, you know, for me, I think we should be looking at an able backup and start promoting within, because we've got 2 excellent goalkeepers in the academy at the moment. And also we've got 2 goalkeepers that just sit on the bench and have never made first team appearances. And it's about time that they give them a go. They train every day. They work hard every day. So give them a go as number 2. Like, how many times did Forster actually play last season? How many times?
Carabao
Right?
Cup once.
So,
Yeah.
so at the end of the day, it's not as if you're throwing a young kid in like Brandon Austin or whatever. You're throwing him in and like because he don't bloody play anyway.
Yeah. I think many are making the point, Pat, coming with you, that Josh Keeley in the youth team looks ever so good for his age. I know John from Lily White Rose has been here and sung the praise of Josh Keeley. I just wonder whether you can have that genuine step up from youth level straight into the first team and be called upon. We know Spurs are going to be across 4 competitions, so you would imagine that they will try and balance out those minutes in the Europa League. I mean, I know, again, it was unique where Gregor Vicario played every single game for Spurs across last season, bar the Carabao Cup, which, again, is a very unique situation. We normally find in the Premier League, especially, that the goalkeepers would tend to rotate for European, for cup football. Pat, how do you see the battle of the goalkeepers change in the course of the summer, and what would you do? Keep, sell, or loan Fraser Forster?
Yeah, I'm with Lee on this one. I think Fraser Forster has had a good stint with us, reliable and dependable when he's been called upon, but he's 36, 37 in March. He's never been the quickest and the best at short reactions and getting down low. And I think it is time to pretty much, give him a farewell, a respectable farewell. And it's time we get a keeper that is much better than him and can, like Lee said, everything Lee said, I agree with, push Vicario on and challenge him. I'm not saying that we need a keeper to come in and try and upset Vicario. I think Vicario is a fantastic number one, but the drop in quality is massive. And I think I know people in the comments said about Fraser Forster's homegrown status. Go and get like a Dean Henderson. Unlike what Lee said, I would spend a 15 to 20 million on a goalkeeper just so that, we're in Europe now. We're going to have double the games. And Vicario can't play 50, 60, 70 games a season. That's going to be insane. He played 38 games in the league. We'd like him to do the same next season. He's a full-fledged Italian international now as well. So he will need to be rotated for his own sanity as well. But Brandon Austin and Alfie Whiteman, I don't know if they're really trusted amongst the Spurs faithful to step up and be a number 2. Both have been at the club for their whole career. They're around about the 25, 26 mark. I would have thought they would have made more of an impact in the first team now if they were good enough. So I'm not sure about that. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with having them in and around the mix. Both have looked decent when played. But yeah, I think we need a solid and quality number 2. And then you can have them, as options, because you never know in a season what can happen. But I think it is time for Fraser Forster to go, really. I don't think he's good enough. And if Vicario does get injured, you are worried then, with the backups as it stands.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, coming over to you, Jay, look, another one that John does rave about over, of course, Lily White Rose is Luca Gunter. Young player for the under-21s, a real decent future ahead of him. It sounds like Spurs have got some really good goalkeepers in the youth that they can really turn to for the future years. But focusing on the present, obviously I need to put out there the fact that the 35-year-old Fraser Forster was handed a new 2-year contract back in December, but then did suffer a fractured foot that ended his campaign early. It's also, again, worth me putting out there that Brandon Austin signed a new 5-year contract. That suggests that he might have competition for the backup to Vicario in that spot. Jay, what do you see happening this summer? Fraser Forster, are you keeping, are you selling, are you loaning? Does it all come down to, as Lee's touched upon, and Pat, that homegrown that we're facing?
Well, I think ultimately you wouldn't trust Fraser Forster if he was to come into a game. I mean, we saw his performance against Fulham in the cup when he was given that opportunity, and he just wasn't good enough. So that is obviously going to be a concern. And Vicario probably is going to have to play 95% of the season, because I just don't look at that squad and kind of the guys that are sort of around the right age to kind of be able to play as a number 2 and be able to just sit on the bench. I just don't think they're going to be good enough to come in. So I think it's just going to be a case of Vicario having to play a lot of football this season. But I obviously, I was seeing the comments, Luca Gunter, he for me was someone I was really impressed with. I was at the game against Sunderland, and he just produced a really impressive performance there. I know he's a England international at youth level as well. But yeah, he looked really good in that game. Only 19 years old. Obviously, that's young for a goalkeeper. So, as I said, yeah, as an England youth international, I think he's definitely one to keep an eye on, and looked really good in that game against Sunderland. I think Sunderland had several opportunities and he produced some really impressive saves. So, yeah, looking forward to seeing Luca Gunter. But I think at 19, you don't really want to be sitting on the bench. I think you want to be getting out and getting minutes. I think he looks like he could be someone who could maybe go out and play in, obviously the lower leagues, maybe a League 2 or maybe a slightly further step down. But yeah, Luca Gunter looks really exciting for me. I was really impressed with him, and sure, you know, Josh Keeley as well is another one. So yes, 2 good goalkeepers coming through there, but I think given the fact, you know, they're 19, I wouldn't want them just sitting on the bench and playing 1 or 2 games. So yeah,
like the other 2 games, isn't it? It's like the other 2, Alfie Whiteman and Brandon Austin, as we've just been talking about. That's basically what they've done. So, you know, at some point, you've got to turn around and say, right, come on in, let's give you a go. You know, Josh Keeley's been brilliant. Luca Gunter's been brilliant. You know, has Brandon Austin been brilliant in training? He's been in and around the first team. You know, has Alfie Whiteman, you know, the same. They're club trained, they're homegrown. There's definitely an element for that there as well. I mean, Pat, you mentioned about 25, 26 years old, bang on the money. That's hardly old for a goalkeeper, is it? To be fair.
That's young. That's young.
Point, they've got to have a go. They've got to have a go. What's the point?
It's interesting. I think we're going to have to position. So in terms of what we're saying about Fraser Forster, boys, are we of the opinion that if we can sort the home
I don't know now. I'm probably keeping Rick. I'm a bit worried.
I'm the same as what Pat and Jamie are saying, though, for me with Fraser Forster. You know, if we're in a situation next season where Vicario gets injured, I'll be honest, I'm not confident in Fraser Forster coming in long term for us, are we? I mean, God forbid, if Vicario breaks his leg on the day the window closes after that, and we're screwed, do we feel comfortable that Fraser Forster could be the goalkeeper until that January window takes us through?
No, and that's why I'm saying about a Dean Henderson or someone of that ilk. You know, a decent English homegrown player that isn't really getting a run. Jack Butland, a player like that, where they're happy to come to a bigger team, be a number 2, compete, and obviously they'll be sold a dream that if you not sold a dream, but just told the truth, if you play well, then you know you can push Vicario, and if you do well, you'll get a number 1 spot. That's what they need, and we need. Yeah, Fraser Forster for 10 games or so would be a massive concern for me. A massive concern.
I mean, look, the thing is, all our competition do have number 2s, like good number 2s as well. I was kind of just thinking through it. I mean, obviously, City have got
Ortega.
That's the one. You know, Chelsea have obviously got Petrovic and Sanchez. Arsenal, Ramsdale and Ray.
Yeah, we've still got that guy. Because we link with him as our number 1. Who is Liverpool's number 2?
Number 2, they've got
Keller.
Yeah, Keller.
Yeah, because we were linked with him, weren't we?
I'm just concerned it's meant to be the straightforward option, and we're only for about 15 minutes on this one.
We haven't got to Brandon Austin, have we?
Yeah. Newcastle have got some good goalkeepers as well. If you look at all the top 8 teams, they've all got much better options on the bench. So that is a concern for me.
So what we're saying is,
would you have Dubravnik then?
Over the guys we've got, definitely.
I think over 4-star would. I think over 4-star would. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a non-debate. Right. So I think what we're saying is, correct me wrong here, guys.
He's just been playing well, hasn't he?
At least, I'm trying to take us forward, at least taking us back. We're going to be here for 4 hours. Right, listen. I think
in the Saxon. Let's go. Eric Torsfett.
We're not bringing Espen Bartson back. Don't do that to us. All right. So just to be clear, I think where we're all at, and tell me if I'm wrong here, lads, is we're saying that providing Spurs could sort the homegrown issue out in terms of that, we'd be happy to replace Fraser Forster this summer, and we're sending Fraser Forster on the transfer market. Are we all in agreement with that? We got a yes across the panel? Amazing, right?
Depends if we have to spat 20 million on a replacement. Because if we do, I'm out on that. I'd rather keep what we got. Daniel Levy and this board is not going to spend 20 million on a backup goalkeeper that's going to play twice if you're lucky, and then we're going to end up Werner's first.
I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, the first goal. I mean, even Vicario is the first goalkeeper cost us less than 20 million. There's no chance we're going to spend 20 million on a backup. But I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. Right, listen. That is where we are in terms of the goalkeeper stats. We're going to move on to the defence here, and I know many are getting paranoid by the fact of Lee's got a Romero frame on his wall, and many are suggesting Lee needs to straighten that out because it's giving them OCD. Right, defenders and where we are with defenders at the moment.
It's well straight now.
Listen, we've got a whole host of defenders that we've got to get through here. Radu Dragashin, Emerson Royale, Christian Romero, Pedro Porro, Ben Davis, Jed Spence, Destiny Adogi, Ashley Phillips, Joe Roden, Sergio Reguilon, Mickey van der Ven. Right, let's go through, I think, what we all agreed to be keeping here without a discussion. You boys tell me if we're wrong. Just stop me in full flow if we're not keeping these guys. Pedro Porro, a much better for him season as a whole. He was much more suited to Postecoglou's game. He managed 11 goal involvements in 34 matches, and he played 3,272 minutes, more than any other outfield player across the campaign. Pedro Porro, we are keeping. Christian Romero, arguably, I think for many would say it's been his best, most consistent season at the football club. 34 appearances, 5 goals to his name. He become a real force in both ends of the pitch, you have to say. And I think for many, they were split towards the end of the campaign, whether it should have been him or Mickey van der Ven that were awarded the player of the season. Of course, we saw Mickey van der Ven get it from the fans, but there was many calls for Morero. On Mickey van der Ven, look, he was one of, if not the biggest stars of the Premier League season. You can't help but wonder how good he would have been even more had he not had that 2.5 elapse of a hamstring injury they had to deal with. He was phenomenal across the campaign, and I think many would suggest he was better than all of us ever thought he would be. Mickey van der Ven, an absolute star. Radu Dragusin, look, he ended up only making 9 appearances for the club since coming in January, which, to be fair, look, I think ultimately the only game you can really maybe put a finger mark against him was the Fulham game, where it was the toughest match, you'd say, of his season. But I think, again, there's no concerns about him at the moment. And Destiny Udogie, he was shortlisted for the Premier League's Young Player of the Season award. A terrific life start at Spurs, where ultimately he flew out of the box. He, of course, had a couple of red cards. The ones that come to mind is that one, of course, against Chelsea. But overall, he did sign a new long-term contract at the football club that will see him tied for the long part of his future to come. I think where we are, guys, and tell me if I'm wrong, from the fact none of you guys have stopped me, I think we're all saying we're going to keep those guys. Those that have got question marks against them are Ben Davies, Emerson Royale, Joe Rodon, Sergio Reguilon, and Jed Spence. Ashley Phillips will come on to him as well. Guys, we're going to start with Ben Davies. Look, I know it's a running theme on here that I always give Ben Davies a 6 out of 10. And he's not given enough praise by me. I think, look, what I would say about Ben is that he's been a absolutely brilliant servant to the football club. Like him as a guy, I think he's a brilliant person to have around the camp. Reliable, steady, Eddie. Is he good enough for where Spurs want to go in the future? I don't personally think so. My concern is that I've been saying that for the last 2-3 seasons as a minimum. Let's go round to the boys and see where they're at. Ben Davies, Lee, a lot of defenders to get through here. Are we keeping, selling, or loaning this summer?
Well, we're not going to loan him. I think we need a left-sided centre-back backup, and we need a left-back backup. And I think you can do that with one person. I'm not saying that's Ben Davies, but it's just a coincidence that he plays both. Well, we don't play him. He kind of tries to play both of them. I think, look, in an ideal world, I'd like to, again, thank him for his service. Hopefully he goes and gets his coaching badges and he gets a coaching role back at Tottenham. He does love us, almost adopted one of our own. But I don't think he unfortunately for Ben, I don't think he's the right person to stay. That said, if you are talking about Carabao Cup and Europa League games in bloody Azerbaijan or whatever, and we're talking about using the youth and using some of the key squad, but then most of them are going out on loan, and you can't have it all ways, right? We've all just sat there and said Vicario can't play 70 games or 65 games all on his own, and nor can Destiny Udogie, and nor can Mickey van der Ven. So we need some sort of backup. So are we going to go and buy a left back backup and a left centre back backup and get rid of somebody who already can do that role? So, but I think I would move him on. He's not loaning, is he? He's not loaning. So
no, I think okay. So Lee, he's going to sell Ben Davies this summer. Let's come over to you if we can, Patty, on this one. Look, ultimately, he did fin at a time when we lost both Romero and Van der Ven to injury. And as we know, of course, look, whenever he has come into the team, he is giving everything for the football club. There's no doubt about it. But whether it's good enough now in terms of where Spurs want to go and just how far down the line Tottenham are and how, again, Davies' career has panned out at Spurs, is now the time, Pat, to thank him for his service and ultimately look to move him on. Where are you on Ben Davies for you, Patty?
You know what? This is probably the one where I'm denied the most out of all of the players, because I'm kind of torn, because realistically, I know he's not good enough to play the way we want to play. And he really does frustrate me when he plays in terms of trying to play out and playing the attacking front-foot football that we love and we want to see our team play. But with all that being said, he is very dependable. He can play left back, centre back, and whenever he's called upon, He gets the job done. There's no fuss. He's happy to be a squad and rotated piece. Also, as well, he's a homegrown player. Even though he's Welsh, he does count as homegrown now. So that's where I kind of nod, thinking there's going to be a lot of games. He's somebody that we can use in Europa and use in the cups, in the squad, rotated pieces, and you know what you're going to get out of him. Where if you're moving too many pieces in the same window, it's very difficult. So I was really torn, Ricky. I'm kind of like, I know I want him gone in terms of the quality and but I also know he's dependable. He's one of the elder statesmen. He's a steady head. He's going to get the job done. We can play him left back and centre back. So he does tick a few boxes, and he's homegrown. So I kind of would say keep with a gun to my head if push comes to shove. But obviously, if we can get a decent offer, by all means, getting gone. But he wouldn't be one of the first I'll be putting up on the chopping block. So that's where I'm at with him.
Okay, Jay, final conclusion on Ben Davies. Where are we in your mind with Ben?
Yeah, if a suitable offer comes in, I'd definitely be selling him. I think that now it's quite obvious that he's not at the required level. I don't think he really suits this Ange Postecoglou system. I think the guys have obviously made good points about, he can be dependable, and obviously he does count as homegrown, which is important. But for me, ultimately, I don't think he's quite good. I just don't think he's good enough anymore. And look, I think you've obviously got the option as well of Mickey van der Ven now as a potential left back. Obviously played there for the Netherlands as well. They look a really good team ahead of the Euros and had a really good game there. And you look at how he played towards the end of the season in that left back role. I think had we have played in there for more games, I think Spurs could have possibly got into that top four, because we almost became a new team really when he finally made that move. So he's certainly an option now for that left back role. You've got one of the best left backs in Europe. Obviously a guy who's, I have no doubts, going to go on to become one of the best, without doubt, one of the top 3 left backs in Europe in Destiny Udogie as well. So I think you're now well covered in left back. I mean, a left-sided centre back is where I'd like to see a strengthen. I think a right back as well, as we'll probably come on to. I know Vanderson from Monaco is being linked at the moment, and it's quite interesting because when we signed Pedro Porro, I remember Ali Gold was reporting that Vanderson was another target. So obviously they kind of see him maybe as a similar sort of player. So that might be a good a good sign if we can get him in. I think Archie Gray's been another name that's been linked. I know he's obviously a central midfielder, and I mentioned him on the previous show we did. Obviously a young guy at Leeds. I think he'd be a really good one because he can play different positions as well. But as I said, we're left back now. I feel like we're well covered with Udogie, who should be playing the majority of games. Then of course you've got Van der Ven there as an option. So suitable offer for Ben Davies, and he's gone.
Yep, I think we're all in agreement then. So we're saying Ben Davies for the right money. Not that we're deciding the money, we're letting Ben go this summer. So that's another one we're moving to the transfer list. It's worth also pointing out that another name Spurs have been linked with during the upcoming summer transfer window is that of Hiroki Ito. Spurs understood to have him on their list of potential targets. 25-year-old can also play left back, helped Stuttgart to a finish in a shock second place in the Bundesliga last season. He has 17 caps to his name as well, and it's believed that his release clause is believed to be between somewhere of 21.5 million to 25 million. One name to keep an eye on, along as Jay said there. Again, other potential targets in mind. Right. Emerson Royale. So where are we in terms of Emerson Royale's future at the moment? Well, look, I think it's fair to say that it's been dominated in the last few days. Jamie's reported on the Daily Hotspur, of course, that there is genuine interest over at AC Milan for Emerson Royale. The understanding of the Daily Mail is that there are talks that are continuing between the football clubs, but I think you've all heard this line before. They are falling short of Spurs' valuation, which is believed to be in the region, if you want to believe it, in the Italian, Spanish, UK newspapers, in the region of around 21 million GBP, Great British Pounds. Look, a player that, Lee, coming over to you, scored on the opening match at Brentford with a lovely low drive, but really, apart from that, has really struggled to find many starts for the football club. There's been times where he was filling in as a centre-back for around 5-6 matches where he did, to be fair, a decent job. He played as a whole 24 games for Spurs in the course of the season. When they needed him, he did also invert to a full-back, which, let's be honest about it, did not really suit the player. Let's discuss Emerson Royale very quickly, boys. Keeping, selling, loaning. Lee, start us off on the Emerson Royale train. Where are we?
Yeah, I think it's time for Emerson to move on. I don't think his career at Spurs has been that kind to him, and vice versa. I mean, I think you had all the stories about him being burgled, having COVID when he first came over. Loads of fans on social media were absolutely battering him when he first came in the first 6-7 games. He was bought as a right back, had to retrain as a right wing back. And then he lost his dog, I think. He had a nightmare and he was spending millions of pounds or whatever it was training and trying to get up. So, look, from an attitude perspective, he's probably got all the core attributes that you would want in somebody's behaviour to try and get it right. And, you've got to respect that. But I think, since Ange Postecoglou's coming to the football club as well, it's quite clear that he can't play an inverted right back, either. The drop off has been hard. What I would say about Emerson under Postecoglou is he's played left back, right back, inverted, number 10, and centre back. Let's actually have it right. That's really tough to do, especially when you haven't ever really nailed down a place of this is my position and this is what I am. He's like a utility player without the utilities. So I think it's time for him to move on. And look, I think a move to AC Milan would be brilliant. Let's not worry about the figures. Of course, they're going to be saying that. It's negotiation at the end of the day. I'm pretty certain that the way the club... Okay, let's rephrase that for the people out there that think I'm a Levy lover. For the way the recruitment action is happening at the moment and players are being released and contracts are not being rewritten and all that sort of stuff, clearly we are moving in the right direction for there. And I've got no reason to believe that won't happen with Emerson. But this is my decision because that's what you're asking me, not the club's. I would move Emerson Royale on. I wouldn't also bring in a replacement directly for him either.
Okay, fantastic.
And what I would do, obviously keep Pedro Porro. You've got Dragusin to be able to cover as a right back potentially in a kind of a last 15, 20 minutes in a game if you needed to. But I would actually redeploy Oliver Skipp as a right back. I'm not even joking. This is absolutely serious. I would deploy Oliver Skipp as a backup right back, as one of our own, as a homegrown player. As a homegrown player.
What the fuck?
as a homegrown player, I would put him in as a right back because our right backs, they don't play right back, do they? They play in midfield. Yeah. They play in midfield. So we keep looking for these right backs like Emerson Royale's a right back.
It's an interesting point you say that.
No, it's not. You're laughing at it, but you think about it, right? We need homegrown club trained players and you need somebody like James Milner to be in the squad. And why can't if Oliver Skipp is a good enough footballer, which again, come and back to me in the comments if you want, and on Twitter. I know you're watching, so you can at me. The reality is he's come through our academy and he is a good footballer. So, and he's going to play, how many games are you going to play? 10?
Next season.
8?
I think less than that.
Exactly. That's my point. Same as the goalkeeper situation. But I tell you what you lot want to do is you want to go and spend 35 million on a backup right back who's not homegrown and not from club trained and not one of our own. It just doesn't make sense. I would rather go and put that money into Eze or put that money into a number 9 striker. Do you see what I mean? So that's before you ridicule my idea. Yeah, it's radical. It's not that radical. So that's what I would do. I would definitely sell Emerson Royale, but I wouldn't go and spend 35 million on a backup right back.
Okay.
I think we're covering it in the squad.
I'm conscious we are still on defenders. We're 38 minutes in. I think, are we done on Emerson Royale? I think the consensus on Emerson Royale is, if anyone can correct me if I'm wrong here, boys, I think Emerson Royale is up for sale. And we're going to leave it like that. Joe Rodon, we'll come over to you if we can, on impact if we can. Joe Rodon at Spurs did take up the option, as Ali Gold reported earlier in the week, to extend the contract of Joe Rodon, despite his future expected to lie elsewhere this summer. He did enjoy a decent stint at loan, of course, at Leeds, where he got a decent game time under his belt. He made 24, I believe, appearances for Spurs, of course, almost in the 4 years that he played for the football club. In relation to Leeds, look, he helped them keep 11 clean sheets over the first 3 months of 2024, which again was really impressive for them. Let's see if we can go through these a bit more quicker. Joe Rodon, where are we? Patty, keeping, selling, loaning Joe Rodon this summer for you?
I'll be short and sweet with this one, Sal. I was gutted when Leeds didn't get promoted because I think if they would have got promoted, that would have been a simple, quick transaction. Now, obviously, he's going to be back on the selling block and we're going to have to see what happens. Love to see him in the Premier League at a lower tabled or position team, but no, he's not good enough to play for Spurs. Unfortunate, just a bad bit of recruitment. Sell.
Okay, Jay, we agree in sell. on Joe Roden?
Yeah, a little bit of a shame that Leeds didn't come up, because obviously that looked like that probably would have been a nailed on transfer. Obviously could have got fairly good money back from him, so it's a shame they didn't come up. But yeah, I'm sure they should be interested. Had a really good season at Leeds last year, so yeah, it's one that we sell and hopefully recoup a bit of money.
Okay, Lee, agree to disagree on that one? Joe Roden, where are we at for you? Same? We're on the same picture. Right, we're going to fly back around to Jamie. Sergio Reguilon is next on the list. Look, for Sergio Reguilon, just to be very clear where we are in terms of our defenders at the moment, Reguilon had not scored a goal or provided an assist for nearly 2 years. Can't believe this. Before he joined Brentford on loan from Tottenham in January.
I reckon we should keep him.
People are going to think you are on something in the comments.
Want to keep him? You watch, give him a chance. Yeah, don't worry about Skippy. Let's just keep Reguilon.
Well, listen, we understand Thomas Frank pitched him at the time. He would be a perfect 3-5-2 in the system for Brentford, in which, where he played there, he chipped in with 3 assists in 11 appearances and produced a superb performance in their 3-3 draw with Aston Villa, where he really was quite agent Sergio at the time. And Brentford did, of course, finish still 4 points above 18th place Luton to remain and keep their Premier League status, although it looks unlikely for Sergio Reguilon, he'll be joining them on a permanent basis. So for the 3rd summer in a row, he will find himself deemed surplus to requirements at Spurs and probably a new home. Jay, short and sweet, keeping, selling or buying. Joe Roden, what are we doing?
With Joe Roden or Reguilon?
Oh, sorry, I'm going back to Joe Roden here. Sergio Reguilon.
Reguilon. Do you know what? I'd probably, rather than have to see Reguilon play again, I'd rather see Skip play there. I
told you. I knew you loved Skip, really.
No,
Reguilon. We're going to end with Skip being the prominent right back at the end of this show.
No, with Reguilon, I think he's made his bed as well. I think he's obviously, changed his profile picture as quickly as he could to Old Trafford when he moved there. Yeah, still kind of absolutely seems to love them. So yeah, get rid of him now.
There's only one reason why Jamie would want to keep him around, and we all know why that is. So.
Yeah, his missus is well. Anyway, you can see, do some research anyway.
Different show, different content. We're not covering that on here for sure. We'll let people's minds do the wondering on that one. And thank you, Jay, for reminding us that he had a stint at Manchester United, because I think even Reguilon forgot that. Bizarrely, which is interesting. Patty, where are we? Sergio Reguilon for you, keeping, sending alone. Have we got an agreement across the board here?
Yeah, so what a shame, because he came in and was such a talented right back and looked like he would be our next right back for the next 10 years. But it just hasn't worked out. Very weak in defence, not good offensively, even though he did have a blinder against Aston Villa, like you said. But yeah, so recoup whatever money we can and get him off our books, because he's been on our books for way too long without actually being even near good enough to get in the squad.
Okay, listen, that's where we stand in terms of that. So we are, again, Reguilon, condemning him to the transfer market. God, if Spurs could be as quick and decisive as us, we'd be rolling this summer. Look how decisive we've been. We've done 43 minutes. We've got about 7 players up for transfer. Forget the players we've got. Although what I would say is I think the fan base might sack us, because now we've got Pedro Porro being rivaled by Oliver Skip in the right back position. So where is this show going? Right.
No, you boys haven't. You've got some geezer no one's ever heard of. You watch a YouTube video for 10 seconds. I've got one of our own homegrown club trained player.
I can't see. You didn't allow me, Vicky. I can't see Skip at right back. I'm sorry. Right back, left back, no. If he's
sorry,
gonna
Pat,
play,
let me just rephrase this. Let me just reframe this for our own reputation. Just to be clear, myself, Jamie, and Pat don't want Skip as right back, but Lee McQueen proudly won't have him as an option.
Keep that away from us. That's all Lee. That's all.
Definitely.
Tier one over there, can I just say?
I saw the days when Emerson Royale and Ben Davies played centre backs at the Etihad, and we got a 3-3 draw. I saw that with my own eyeballs. Do not even worry about that.
Right, I think a nice one that should be next. Very, very seamless and easy. And we're going to come to, if we can, Jay, for this one. Jed Spence, Jay, come over to you. We understand talks are continuing between Spurs and Genoa over the permanent sale of Jed Spence, who was on loan with them last season. After a spell at Leeds was cut short by the Championship club, the 23-year-old spent the latter half of the campaign with the Italian side, making 16 appearances as they finished 11th. I'm hoping, boys, will be a very seamless one around the table. Jay, Jed Spence, selling?
Yeah. I mean, look, obviously, when we signed him, I think a lot of fans were just up in arms as why we weren't so quick about getting him. And look, I think sometimes, you can't. It was just a disastrous signing, that one. And obviously, he's done fairly okay in his loan because it looks like they're trying to sign him. So yeah, hopefully we can recoup a bit of money with him, and yeah, that's an easy sell, and hopefully we can go and reinvest that money again.
I think I've got a nod of also approval across the boys here. I think there's nods, are we? Yeah, we've got a nod on Jed Spencer, one we haven't got to be concerned to discuss. In terms of the duo that did return from Plymouth, Ashley Phillips, Alfie Devine. Ashley and Alfie, I think for them, a bit of a mixture of a loan spell for both players. Look, I mean, some decent first team minutes in there for both. I think for arguably you could say for Alfie Devine, wasn't the most perfect loan for him. I think again we should see what they do across the summer. I'm already kind of diving into the midfield there slightly, but for Ashley Phillips, of course, a player that ultimately for Spurs had a game that he played against Newcastle in Australia, one that we'll see in pre-season, I'm sure, to see just how far off Ashley Phillips is. I think, boys, let's do them as a pair. For both of those guys, are we keeping, selling, or loaning? Ashley Phillips, Alfie Devine. Don't ask me why they're coming as a pair, but they are for the nature of concert time. Strike off your bingo card. Lee, what are we doing with both those players?
Loans for me, mate. I think Ashley Phillips had a good loan, as you just said, at Argyle. And I think Alfie Devine, chatting to John as well, obviously one of our own from Lila White Rose. I think both of them probably need a loan. It's a difficult one with Alfie, actually, because he's had a couple of loans. But let's be fair, Kane had about 200. So it's not, but it's like, I don't know, 200, but he did go out on loan a lot of time. It's not over for Alfie by a long shot, but I think he needs a good 40 games. Did Alfie go to Pop?
He was at Port Vale, wasn't he? And then
he went to Plymouth, didn't he? Yeah. So I think he probably needs a championship loan.
Okay, listen, I think we all agree with that. Pat, anything to add on those ones? We all go with that?
All good. Loan both of them to decent mid to lower championship teams where they can play. The point of loans for these guys is for them to actually play. So, like Veliz, like he went to obviously Spain and didn't play. And it turns out there was politics and he got caught up in a lot of, hoo-ha. But these guys need to play at a decent team where they're going to play and we can really see what they're about. And it's about their development. So, loans to decent to mid-lower championship teams. Let them play a lot of games. And then obviously we can reassess next summer.
Yep. Okay, so just to summarise where we are in terms of our defenders, we are keeping Radu Dragashin, we are keeping Christian Romero, we are keeping Mickey van der Ven, Pedro Porro, Destiny Udogie, Ashley Phillips in there, and we are waving goodbye to Emerson Royale, we're waving goodbye to Ben Davies for the right price, same as Jed Spence, same as Joe Rodon, same as Sergio Reguilon. Look at this, it's effective. It's brutal recruitment here on Last Word on Spurs.
Just on Jed though, Ricky, just mention Jed again, just quickly on Jed. That's another reason why it didn't work, is but all of us were screaming because at Nottingham Forest versus Arsenal game, we wanted him. It was totally a club signing. Everyone was screaming at Conte, play him. Conte weren't having it, and Conte got the brunt of that. And what's he done? What's he done under the same, completely different manager, completely different management team? Same thing. He got released again on loan. That it just goes to show you, doesn't it? That if just because we want someone as the fan base, it don't mean to say that it works. Do you see what I mean? And that's the reality. That's why it's beautiful. That's why we love the games. It's all opinion. But the reality is you've got to let the people that are in charge make the decisions for their team. And this is Ange Postecoglou now.
Can I just say, Lee, we're going to be coming on to one of those prime examples of a plan that the fan base wanted.
Okay.
And ultimately, we know what happened. We're going to be coming on to him very, very soon. And one of our owners, we know, John from Lily White Rose, put out an absolutely storming poll on that individual, which I think put us all to...
Love it. John was trolling himself to find what that original survey, original poll was. I love that.
Right, okay. We're going to move on to the midfielders and where we are in terms of Spurs' midfield stars. Now, look, we have to discuss Oliver Skipp, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, Yves Bissouma, James Maddison, Giovanni Lo Celso, Pat Matassar, Rodrigo Bentancur, and the incoming Steven Bergvall, who is in the process of joining up, of course, with the Spurs first team ahead of the upcoming pre-season. Now, to start on Lo Celso, look, he got his season up and running in November, of course, with a hamstring injury. He scored in back-to-back games for Spurs against Aston Villa and Manchester City. Look, I think he'll be disappointed that the fact for him alone, he made only 4 Premier League starts across the entire campaign. We understand at the moment that Real Betis want to sign the Spurs midfielder, who, of course, at the time, Betis signed Lo Celso from PSG, then someone to Spurs. But as we understand at the moment, they have shown the most concrete interest so far in the player this summer. We also understand that Aston Villa are lingering in the background for his signature. Unai Emery, a big fan, of course, having potentially worked with the player previously. Guys, we've got to speed things up and accelerate here. Lee, keep selling or loaning Giovanni Lo Celso. Off you go.
100% sell. I mean, Real Batis all day long. Thank you so much for your time. We'll take your money. We're gone. I'm so disappointed with Lo Celso. So disappointed with him. He looks like absolute beans when he plays for Argentina, and Messi loves him, and all these stories that come out of it. The bloke got signed in 2019, and he scored, I think he scored a couple of goals against Man City, to note. I don't know what he's done. He's more injured than not. I'd rather have Oliver Skip in midfield.
Interesting. Okay, boys. Anyone disagree on Lo Celso just in terms of selling? Are we all agreeing, Pat? Sell Lo Celso?
I agree with Lee. I do think it's a tricky one because with Lo Celso, I think last year, Ange didn't utilise him to the best of his abilities. And there was a lot of games where I was screaming for Lo Celso to come on and he wasn't played. And I'm like, why is he not getting minutes when we could use his impetus in the game and so on? So as much as he frustrates me, as much as he's always been injured, as much as he's been a letdown, I also feel that he's been let down by the managers that have come in. He's played under so many different managers, never really fitted into a system. So it is tricky. Sometimes with these players, it's not just about them. It's about all the circumstances. And sometimes it's unfortunate timing and all of that stuff. But disappointing because when he does play and he's on point, he's on point. But it is frustrating. It is time to sell. He needs to get off our books. And hopefully we can get rid of him this summer and we move on. Rather get a player in that is more reliable and dependable. But I don't think it's all on the sales. So that's all I would say.
Okay, Jake, come over to you. Look, interesting comments here. I've got to say, coming through to us from viewers and listeners that one there. Lo Celso finally was back in form for Spurs, but then decided to opt to play the out of form James Maddison, who came back in and stunk the place up. Jay, where do you stand on that? Is that a fair comment?
Honestly, I would if I would keep Lo Celso. I know obviously he's had the injury concerns at times, but I would say he's probably one of our most talented midfielders.
Can I say, Lee in the green room, he's ranting and raving there. He's swearing and bollocking.
Ability-wise, he is better than James Maddison. You see the way he plays for Argentina, and when he's at his top form, I think at times we saw, when he was given those opportunities, he was good enough. And I have to say, everyone will know I'm the biggest Ange Postecoglou fan. I was, not even from day one, because I was obviously wanted. When we were linked, I just loved Ange, but I would disagree with him on the way he's treated Giovanni Lo Celso. He's been fit and available at times, and it's just not been utilised. And I think for a player that is just, frustrating. And you see the way that when he is treated, when the manager wants him for Argentina, he's a superb player. Lionel Messi absolutely loves him. He thinks he's a key player. We saw him not even fit enough for the World Cup, and yet he was in the dressing room holding the World Cup, taking pictures. I don't think I wouldn't want £50 million. I'd rather keep that player, but ultimately it's my opinion is irrelevant because Ange Postecoglou doesn't want to play him, and ultimately he's not going to get that opportunity. We had so many times, they said Maddison was stinking the place up at times and still wasn't dropped for Lo Celso. So we're not going to see him. And I know a lot of people, obviously huge amounts will disagree with me, but I think he's a very talented player. And, when he is fit, he is a brilliant player. So
but he's never fit. I'm not going to go in on you for that because you've made some really good points, but he's made 9 90-minute games in 5 years. We paid 55 million for him. He is just as bad as Ndombele, who I'm sure we're going to come on to. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. He might be talented as is Ndombele, but he can't. He's not fit. He doesn't play, and there must be an attitude thing because every single manager that's managed him, and there's been a few because we have him every year, and he's been here 5 years, so we must have had 5 managers. None of them fancy him. He's a starter in none of them teams.
Okay, so where we are, just to confirm and summarise on the sell. So we've got here, for me, I'm putting myself in the selling camp. We've got 3 saying sell. We've got Jamie saying keep. Is that right, Jay?
Yep. 100%.
Stake in the ground, keep. Okay, fine. Right, okay. So, look, I think out of that verdict, unfortunately, Jay is in the minority. We're the majority. We'll be selling Lo Celso this summer. Sorry, Jay, about that. But
I was a minority in Ollie Skip, but he's playing right back, mate. Don't worry about that.
I just love that.
I'm selling Ollie Skip and investing in a new right back. That's what I'm doing with Ollie.
Right, we're going to come on to him in a second. Right, let's get this Ndombele conversation out of the way, guys. This one could drag, and I'm conscious of time as I am. Get it off that bingo card, guys. Look, now, according to multiple sources, we can say it across the weekend. Tungi Ndombele is set to leave Tottenham on a free transfer this summer. Spurs are expected to terminate that contract and, with immediate effect, find an agreement and a settlement with Ndombele in which both teams can part ways and allow the player to go into the summer as a free agent. It remains to be seen, of course, where Ndombele's next club will be. He spent the majority of the season again on loan in the 23-24 campaign at Galatasaray. The Turkish Super League club were victorious with Ndombele in the side as they once again became the champions of Turkey. And for a second season in a row, Ndombele collected silverware. And for Galatasaray, it was the third loan of the midfielder's time with Spurs. He also spent loan time at former club Lyon and Napoli during his time with Spurs. But his time at Tottenham as a player, he's going to be coming to an abrupt end. We will not see him again in a Spurs shirt. Lee, when you talk about failings of transfer windows, failings of players that maybe fans wanted and ultimately didn't work out, isn't Ndombele the key cornerstone prime example to, I'm sure, the debate you're going to quickly make on this player?
Oh, 100%, and fair play to a good friend of the show and good friend of Adam Osberg. He sent me some of these numbers. 60 million transfer fee for Ndombele, 200 grand a week, which equals 10.4 million pounds per year, 2.5 seasons before the loans. Assume other clubs paid half his wages for that 2.5 years. There's another 5.2 million for 2 years for Spurs to be paying. That's a total cost roughly of around 60 million plus 39 million in wages, amounting to just shy, a measly 1 million shy of 100 million pounds that we paid this guy, and we've got a return of absolutely nothing out of that bloke. I mean, talk about, and people, look, and I will stick up for the club here, people talk about we don't spend loads of money on big money signings. Well, when we do, and they go like that, of course you're going to have your fingers burnt, aren't you? Literally offered literally nothing. A brilliant game against Marine, was it, in the FA Cup? And a fantastic goal against Sheffield United, I think it was, in the green kit. Might have been Sheffield United.
Was a great goal.
It was a great goal. And he played well against when Son scored 4 against Southampton, when Kane got 4 assists and Ndombele played well. I mean, and the craziest stat that you've just read out there, out of everything there, he's won 2 titles. I mean, you literally could not make this stuff up. Totally flattered to deceive. No idea what's happened with that guy. But he will finish his career and tell his grandkids that he's earned a lot of money as an amazing footballer and won titles wherever he's been. And what a great career for him. But for us Spurs fans, we've had to suck that up, and it's been absolute shocking. So 100% sell. Get rid, rip the contract up. So you ain't going to sell him, are we? Save 10 million.
Pat, come around to you. Look, he was the club's record signing for a fee of 60 million euros. A player that I think for all of us fans, as John very kindly put out his tweet from 4 or 5 years ago, when we were asked as a fan base what was the most popular midfielder we wanted at the time. I think you had on them. Please tell me if I'm wrong here, Jay. I think we had Bruno Fernandes on there. Obviously, we had Ndombele's name in there. Can you remind me of the couple more midfielders that were on there?
Lo Celso was on there because
Lo Celso was on there.
Yeah, Lo Celso was on there. And Ndombele got an overwhelming response, though.
He got like 60%. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Pat, is it more just it's sadness, I think, rather than anger as to why it's not worked out? Because there's clearly a player there, what frustrates me with all the ability in the world. And I think the frustrating thing is we just saw it so rarely, Pat, right?
Yeah, you know what? Like, as frustrating as it is, I think that if we're considering ourselves as a big club and we're considering ourselves as guys that want to compete with the best, we just have to suck it up and move on. Like, we can't keep crying over spilt milk. Don't get me wrong, it hurts. It is a shambles. We spent 100 million on Lo Celso and Ndombele combined, but we can't keep mulling over it and crying over spilt milk. When we spend big, every club that you can think of has spent big and it's gone wrong, but that just shouldn't deter us from spending big again. But obviously just do a bit more homework, do a bit more due diligence on the player's temperament, their attitude. What's the player like when things don't go their way? What's the player like when they get dropped or they have a bad game? How do they react? All of that stuff, without going on too long, because Otherwise, we'll never compete at the top table if we always say, "Oh, we can't spend big because look what happened with Ndombele." And Ndombele was unfortunate, but he's got his own issues, and maybe time will tell what's happened. For me, there has to be more than something going on behind the scenes, because it's just insane that a guy that talented just refuses to get it together. Like, after you go unknown once or twice, shouldn't your ideas buck up? Shouldn't you think, you know what, I'm literally on my last legs here, let me revive my career? None of that seems to have happened. Something has to be going on outside of and maybe we'll see that in, due time. But it is a real frustrating. It is heartbreaking, because the guy's so good, man. Like, he was so good. Like, when you watch his skills and, watching the games when he first was signed, he was insane. And let's not forget the big clubs that we battled for a signature. Like, it was such a coup at the time. But obviously, hindsight is a beautiful thing. It hasn't worked out, but I wouldn't let that deter us from going big again. Obviously, like I said, with all the stuff I said before. So a big shame. Obviously, his contract looks like it's about to get ripped up, which is the best thing for all parties. But please do not let that deter us from going big again. Spurs fans and the board, we need to aim big and be a big club. And obviously, all the big clubs have had mishaps, but they just bounce back. We seem to lull on it forever.
Yeah. You know what, Pat? I think you totally agree. I think many are saying, let's take the L and move on. There are some really good, funny takes in the comments, I must just say. I mean, do you know what the one that is screaming through, Jay, is just, we've discussed two of the players out of that 2019 window. Well, obviously, one of them also has departed, since this show as well, in Ryan Sessegnon on a free transfer. That 2019 window is one that ultimately, I think Lee kind of, as soon as that comment came up, I could see Lee's anger there kind of pointing to it, saying, that window really, I know Alistair Gold just did a piece on it recently, actually, that window, and how much that set Spurs back.
Yeah.
That 29 window was obviously frustrating. Again, when you look at the fact of just maybe how mismanaged that transfer was at the time, I mean, many calling for the fact of the lack of due diligence. And part of me, Lee, for saying it's what you do in your day job with the behaviour and ultimately the character of that person. I just wonder, Jay, looking back in hindsight now, clearly enough, wasn't done, because when you look through his career, unfortunately, a lot of those traits that we saw at Spurs were at other clubs as well, Jay, right?
Well, to be honest with you, I feels like we might have learned from that in terms of trying to sign players now that have strong attitudes. I mean, obviously under Ange anyway, we know the way, or we've kind of got the gist of how he operates in terms of, he wants to talk to the player. Does he really want to come to Tottenham? Obviously, that seems to be a big thing for Ange anyway, but I do feel as though we have kind of looked to sign players with the right attitudes that, that is something that we do so want to do. But look, as well, I think as well, that shouldn't put us off trying to sign players of brilliant technical ability. I think that's one thing that we have maybe missed in terms of some of our signings. Maybe at times we have gone a bit too much for just getting in good characters. I think now it's time to start adding a bit more technical quality to the squad and trying to find that right balance between the two. Maybe a player that, is more of, a controversial character, but someone that will want to express themselves, has that ability. So, it'll be interesting to see can we change the way we operate? But obviously a disastrous signing. It does feel as though we have learned from that in terms of doing our due diligence now. But so just it's a very sad signing, because when we signed him, it was, we beat many top clubs to him. Obviously, Real Madrid, Juventus, Barcelona were all clubs that obviously really liked him, and we pulled the trigger with him, and paid all that money, and it's such a shame it didn't work out. But it's just a shame.
I think the thing is, always with the Amazon doc, which we were very humbled and fortunate to feature in, it had that just clip of Steve Hitchen at the time that just said, obviously his memory with the transfer window, I hate the transfer window, which just didn't go well at the time, because ultimately, when you look back and reflect on that 2019 window, when you've got a guy there, whether it was taken out of context or not, saying, I hate the transfer window, and he was in control of the window in 2019, it does give deep concerns. But look, I think as
this
Jay
is just a point on that. This is and the piece that Ali Gold did, and I think Pat and Jamie are spot on, Rick, around kind of not letting us deter. That wasn't actually the point I was making. The point I was making is that there's no wonder why people say, "Go spend the money, paying what they want." But you got to do your due diligence, right? You have to do it. Behavior and attitude is miles more in this sport than technical ability. You can have all the technical. Go and ask Gary Neville. Like, Gary Neville was one of the best right backs, if not the best right back in world football for years. But you'd be the first to tell that he didn't have the technical ability. It's not about that. It's about the attitude first. And then Ndombele, exactly, Pat. And on Ndombele, Lo Celso, in my opinion, they just haven't got it. Cesc is slightly different. I think Cesc was just battered with injuries. But that window as a whole was an absolute disaster. And the reason why we're still talking about one is because they're still on the books and we're talking about a transfer show. But two, 5 years later, and we're still paying for them, and we're still paying for their mistakes. That's why the recruitment, and to be fair, it has got miles better. You talk about technical ability. You look at Pedro Porro, you look at Destiny Udogie, you look at Mickey van der Ven, you look at Vicario, you look at Romero, just in our back five. I don't think anyone would change any of them players for our starting 11. So obviously the recruitment's got better, and none of them, by the way, was a record signing. I'm not saying that we don't need to get a record signing. I'm just saying none of them were.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. Look, I think just so we fly through those that I think we all agree are going to be staying this summer. Brennan Johnson, look, a guy that, of course, came in only recently for Spurs. 15 goal involvements for his first 35 Premier League games for the club. 10 assists, 5 goals. A decent return for the 23-year-old, although we are aware of just there being a lot of criticism for him over the course of the campaign around the inconsistency of his finishing and decision-making. But look, a player that will ultimately only be getting better with more games under his belt and, of course, playing around better players. It's also obviously worth me enforcing the fact that Pat Matassar, young guy that came in, took the Premier League by really good storm in his first full season under Ange Postecoglou. One that I think we've got really genuine high hopes for in terms of his future. At the moment, I think, listen, we've made that decision in relation to Giovanni Lo Celso, Tsungi on Ndombele. I think with the other guys, there may be a potential where, to some degree, juries may be out a little bit. And the reason why I say that is, again, when we come on to someone, I would say, in the ilk of Yves Bissouma, it's a guy that with Yves Bissouma started off this season really well in the opening 10 games of the season. I think for many, had he kept up that form of the first 10, he'd be up there for many in terms of one of our players of the season. As Spurs' season dipped, so did Yves Bissouma's, and quite frankly, couldn't restore and get back to the levels that we saw. Really, you'd say, in that first 10 games. I mean, whatever happened from Luton onwards, we never saw the same Yves Bissouma. A quick one across the board here, guys. We've got still a lot of players to get through. Keeping, selling, loaning. Yves Bissouma. Let's start with Pat on him. Patty, Yves Bissouma, what are we doing?
Definitely keep. But this season is make or break for me. Jamie made a good point about not getting rid of all of our technically gifted players. He's 100% one of those guys. But the dedication, the desire, the attitude, not attitude, but more so like just applying it. Application, probably the better word. Applying himself in the game all the time. That's what I need to see more of. The guy is mustard when he's on point, but we've seen so many games where he's coasted, disappeared, or just not been himself. To be fair to him, during that end of the season, even in some of the games where we weren't at our best, he was really good. But it kind of got missed because of the poor performances of us as a collective. But he 100% needs to be doing more. He's 27, 28 in August, so he's a fully fledged, full grown. This is the best you're going to get out of him now. He's in his prime years. I need to see more from him. He should be commanding the midfield in pretty much all the games he plays in. He's got all the ability in the world, but we need to see more from him now. But 100% keep, but obviously the jury's out because we need to see the best of Bissouma in a more frequent basis.
Patty, thank you so much. Jamie, you're umming there as well to that. Where are you on Yves Bissouma? Very quickly.
Exactly the same as Patrick in terms of technical ability is outstanding. I think not only is he good in the defensive side, obviously, is that that number 6, but he can also drive the ball forwards. His passing ability, just technical ability is fantastic. But it was a real issue for us, that number 6 spot. And, you look at that back four and you wonder why we were leaking so many goals. And because you just look at the quality of it. You wouldn't want to replace Porro, any of the, either of those two centre-backs. Udogie, you wouldn't want to replace either. So for me, the issues come from the midfield and kind of a lack of steel in there. And unfortunately, Bissouma's played a big part in that. So he was brilliant in those first 10 games and has, and obviously had a couple of other good games throughout the course of the season, but didn't do it enough. So I don't know. I mean, if the right offer was to come in, it would have to be big money, and I think you could potentially upgrade him. You would want someone who's more consistent, but Basuma at his best, you will struggle to get a better player than that. So it's a really tricky one. But yeah, I think if I was to give a sensible answer, it would be I would keep him. But if the big offer was to come in and maybe the right player was available to replace him, I might look to replace him. So it's just frustrating with Basuma because we know how good he can be. So we'll see. But he's probably one I would keep.
The feeling I get, guys, is as Pat has alluded to, I think the kind of upcoming season really is make or break for him. I think we need to see, as Pat has said there, ultimately, can this guy get back to that level in the opening 10? And if he can, as Jamie said, what a player we would have on our hands. Lee, I mean, on Basuma, look, a real season of 2 halves for him. Superb in the opening 10. Obviously, he had a situation where he had the 2 red cards, 8 yellows in total, along with the fact, of course, of obviously missing whilst the malaria kicked in, which was a big shame. Again, you do wonder, had he not suffered the illness, would you have got back that player from the first 10? Do you agree with Pat there that it is ultimately a make or break season, and are we keeping him for now?
I agree, spot on, virtually word for word with both Jamie and Pat, to be fair. The only thing I'll probably add is, in our development at the moment, we, as you've just talked about, we can't have passengers. And actually, I don't think Basuma is a bench player. I'll go back to my Skip scenario for right back, not for central midfield, by the way. But Skip's a bench player. Ben Davies, Pat, you made a decision. You made a comment earlier about Davies is happy to come on, fill in. That's not Basuma, and I don't think you get the best out of Basuma by him sitting on the bench. And at the moment, Basuma's not a number 1 starter in your team. Basuma the first 10 games, 100%. But Basuma the rest of the season, no. And so actually, that's where I'm kind of agreeing with Jamie on that point is, if somebody come in with a 40 million, 45 million offer for him and it enabled us to upgrade in the areas that we need, I think everybody would agree with this. We need a number 6, if you want to just call it that is a steal. Like somebody's going to give that steal that Jamie was just talking about, shield the back 2, because we don't play with fullbacks, they're midfielders. To really, really steal that up. And that's not Basuma either. Technically, he's good. Again, I just wonder. I mean, he's had a lot of stuff. I don't want to kill the guy. Do you know what I mean? He's had a lot of stuff going on, and I just wonder whether or not he has. I don't know. I'm speculating, but I just wonder whether or not he's got the attitude of I'm here now at a top 5, top 6 club, and I'm there. Like he hasn't played for that big club, and we've seen it before. Let's be fair. Wilfried Zaha was absolutely brilliant at Palace. Went to Man United, was anonymous. Went back to Palace, brilliant.
Yep.
Just sometimes the upgrade don't quite work. Anthony Martial, Anthony Martial, an amazing kid, whatever. Like didn't really shine in the United shirt. Maybe I'm not saying Tottenham is as much pressure as United. When you go into a big club like the Bayern Munich's and the Real Madrid, or you're expected to win, maybe Basuma. Yeah, we saw all them interviews, right, with Basuma and Yaya Toure when Yaya was at the club, and Basuma was like, I look up to him, I want to do this, and we just didn't see that after them 10 games. So something's not quite right.
Yep, I think that's fair. I think on that basis then, guys, from what we've all said, we're going to keep Basuma, but to allude to Pat's point, it's a make or break season for Yves Basuma. As we said, Pat Matasar, look, again, similar to Udogie, remarkable, only 21 years of age, earned a real big long-term contract for himself. And ultimately, he got 3 goals and 3 assists across the season. But I think many would suggest they had much more involvement than just that, obviously, in terms of the 6 GNA. Because, again, he's very much part of the future. Let's discuss a player that, again, is one I think many would agree on this panel going to be up for sale this summer. And that is a Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. In terms of Pierre, this season was really reduced to a supporting role, both on and off the pitch. He still made actually 39 appearances for the club, contributed whenever he could off the bench. He did end up playing in defence for that crazy game against Chelsea, of course, where it all started to go wrong. We understand that former Spurs boss Antonio Conte is keen to reunite with Højbjerg during this upcoming summer transfer window as he takes the reins at Napoli. Højbjerg is one of the Spurs players that, of course, they'll be probably looking to sell this summer with his contract expiring in 2025. Guys, we've still got a number of players to go through. I'm just going to ask for nodding heads here. Are we all in agreement? Højbjerg's on that transfer list this summer? We've got nodding heads. Right, so Højbjerg is on the transfer list this summer. And let's come to one that, again, depending on what Lee said earlier, could really change the spectrum of where this show does go. And that is of Oliver Skipp. Look, overall, difficult season for Skippy. One that has been seen naturally as a number 6, never really had the chance to play there. He ended up really being adopted to a number 8. He was excellent, you've got to say, in that draw at Manchester United, despite, at the time, many might forget, he was ill for a lot of that week. But Alistair Gold, friend of the show, has revealed that Ollie Skipp would like to get more regular game time next season, even if that means going out on loan. But obviously Spurs would not want to be in a situation where they lose a club-trained player if they were to allow him to leave permanently. But again, it's emphasising the point here that he was restricted to just 5 Premier League appearances last season, and in total completed just 861 minutes of football across all competitions. I think where I was on earlier with Fraser Forster, I think if Spurs can sort their homegrown issues out, Skippy would be one that I'd like to see moved on for the right price. Let's just go round the panel very quickly. Patty, are you nodding to that one as well for you?
Yeah, I mean, I did actually put keep just because of our homegrown quota. I think we're struggling at the moment. So, you know, him, but realistically, in terms of quality, I would want him sold. So if we could get a decent fee for him, so, because the talk about him going on loan doesn't do us any favors. It's not like he's not young enough where we know we're going to see a massive improvement in going on. It just doesn't make sense to me. So you either keep him or you sell him. That's my thoughts on Skipp.
Okay. And Jamie, just coming to you on this, I think the kind of balance across the panel here is that, look, if you take the homegrown element out of it for a second, and we ask you the question, is Oliver Skipp good enough for where Spurs want to go? Have you seen enough to be able to make a judgment on whether Skipp, in your opinion, is good enough for Spurs want to go in your mind?
I've seen signs that I think he can be a very good player and potentially a very good Premier League player. And I'm sure he can have a very good Premier League career. But ultimately, I just don't see him ever getting the opportunities where he's going to have that consistent run. So, yeah, I think he's one that I would probably sell because I just don't think he's going to get those opportunities that are going to allow him to become the player that, you know, we'd all love him to see him become. So, yeah, I mean, maybe a loan might, you know, if he was to go out on loan and you know, it would have to be to a Premier League club or really top, you know, top championship club. But yeah, I think there's definitely been signs that he could have a very good Premier League career, but he's just not going to get those opportunities at Spurs. So either sell or keep. Sell or keep, sell or loan for me.
Okay, great. We've got to cover a couple more midfielders and attackers, and Macca, we're 117 in. Skippy, you've been very passionate about the thought of maybe deploying him to a right back earlier in this show. Just very quickly, where we are on your mind, Lee. If, I had to ask you to make a judgment today based on footballing ability, are we keeping or selling Oliver Skipp in your mind?
Well, he's 23 years old. He's club trained. He's homegrown. He can be a utility player, like I mentioned earlier in the piece. And I'd keep him. And you know, I want to ask the question to the panel and all the viewers and listeners, everyone on Twitter or on X. How many of you? Let's do a poll. How many of you are asking for Kyle Walker-Peters to come back? Because he's in exactly the same situation as what Oliver Skipp is in now. And I bet you, he's homegrown and he counts as club trained. Let's get him back as a backup right back. Same thing. We got rid of him because he weren't good enough, and now we want him back.
If he's replacing Emerson, then yeah.
That's what Skipp would be doing, wouldn't it? Do you know what I mean? So anyway, Skipp for me, I would, if there's an opportunity, but I'm with Pat on this. I don't see the point of loaning him out because he's 23. He's going to have a year's loan. He's going to come back, and then what? Do you know what I mean? So you either keep him around the squad, and like you said, Rick, if he wasn't homegrown or club trained, I wouldn't be arguing that we should be keeping Skipp. But that's what he offers us.
Okay, we've got a bit of a split on this one here. I think we have to veer to the thought, if you guys agree, I think we are saying we're keeping him as a squad player, but if the right offer was to come in, we look at it. So I think that's where we are with him. To not, again, put this controversial show into any more of a different element, Rodrigo Bentancur, look, the Uruguayan, of course, returned earlier than expected from his cruciate ligament injury. His first start was on the end of a really poor, horrific challenge from Matty Cash, one that ultimately you can argue, still we've not seen the absolute best of Bentancur in terms of getting back. He only played 25 times this season for Spurs and only started to really regain his fitness towards the back end of the season. I think, look, by his own admission, he'll be nowhere near the standards that he wants to be. We're going to do a very quick yes or no on this, guys, and get around this one. Bentancur, keep, sell or buy. I think I'll be saying keep at the moment. I haven't seen any concern that we can't get that player back. Macca is saying yes. Patty is saying yes. Jamie is looking into the oblivious. Jay, are we saying Jamie's saying yes as well? We've got to keep on Rodrigo Bentancur, and we've now going to discuss some of those that, again, you could argue their future is up in the air. We're going to have to try and squeeze in the forwards, guys. We are conscious of time. Third time I've said that in the opening 1 hour 20 here. Where are we going? Dejan Kulusevski. Do you know what? I think this one for me is a really, really interesting one. I've got to say, a real odd season, you'd say, as a whole for Dejan Kulusevski. He was Spurs' third top scorer across the course of the season. Worth me putting out there, it was only with 8 goals, whether you take it from that. 3 assists in 39 games for Dejan Kulusevski over the course of the season. To balance that out, he is only 24. Nobody can really question his work rate. You can question his productivity. You can question his decision-making. You can question his finishing, which we're going to do right now. Dejan Kulusevski, let's be honest about it. If a big offer comes in this summer, boys, and there's more options on the table, what are we doing? Let's go to Jamie. Jay, I'm starting with you because you looked really concerned on giving out the pros and the cons. What are we doing?
No, I mean, it'd be interesting to see what a big offer would look like for Dejan Kulusevski. He was very disappointing this season, but only very disappointing because we know how good he can be. I mean, again, he is a guy whose creative ability is incredible. And yeah, it's obviously disappointing the lack of assists that he got. Maybe this is the issue. Obviously, his pace is a real, is really disappointing, and maybe long term he probably is a player that should be playing centrally. Obviously, we saw him play centrally against Sheffield United. Obviously, scored a brace as well. So maybe that's where he might be better suited. Obviously, he's very, he's a physical player. He's a big guy as well. I think he's a well over 6'2". So he's I think maybe he's a guy who we should be looking to play as maybe a more central position, because on the wing he has been very disappointing. It's an obvious keep for me, but I mean, I don't know if a £60 million offer was to come in. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Maybe I would look to sell, but yeah, I'd 100% keep.
Hypothetically, Lee, offer comes in from Saudi tomorrow, 60 million. What are you doing?
I'm keeping him. We're talking about technically brilliant players. He's technically brilliant. He had a bad season. There's no doubt about it in terms of his goals and assists. When he first came to the football club, first 6 months, he was on fire. People said within the first 2 minutes he can't run. But then he was scoring goals, making assists. He was brilliant. Last season was weird. He is, again, he's one of these players that if you got rid of him, like you lot used to tell me with Ndombele, he'd go on and win the Ballon d'Or. I think he's a very good player, and I think that he would go and play for a Pep side. So I'm definitely keeping, but I would put him in the centre.
I think just to back up here, just for Pat's defence, Pat wasn't privy to the last one, I suppose, at the time, where Pat was here saying that Ndombele would win the Ballon d'Or. I don't know if Pat, you said that in a previous life, but me and Jamie were of the opinion that he could have won the Am I putting words in your mouth there, Jay? He might have said it. I think he did say it on Love Sport.
Don't worry, man. They said it. Don't man.
Me and Jay said a lot of stuff in the Love Sport days that probably was wrong. I don't know.
I'll say some regarding here, tell you.
Not putting words in your mouth. And Pat hasn't said that. I mean, he did predict the 9th place finish. He did not predict Ndombele to win Ballon d'Or. Just to be clear, Pat can tell me off air if that did happen and bring it into this show. Right. So very quickly on Dejan Kulusevski. Look, I mean, the argument, Pat, we're having a lot of comments coming in. Can he play as a false 9? What happens if Spurs sign Eze? What happens to his future? Very straight, Pat. Big offer comes in for Kulu. On offer that you would be tempted to accept. What are you doing? Are you keeping, selling, loaning? What are you doing?
To be fair, I want to keep Kulusevski. I think he had a poor season by his standards. But again, if we're a club that wants to compete and battle with all the top teams, and we need quality in abundance on the bench to rotate and all of that stuff. So you get Eze, you still have Kulusevski. We can't always bring one player in and sell another. Otherwise, the team's not getting stronger. So you need to have options. You need to have people rotating and battling for places. The manager needs to be able to look at the bench if things aren't going right and change 1 or 2 or 3 things. So, yeah, we need to keep guys like Kulu. 8 goals, 3 assists. Doesn't sound that bad. We know it wasn't great because we know what he can do. But I feel he'll have a much better season this year. Don't forget as well, like, again, sometimes I hate doing this, but you also have to take context and real life into the equation. The guy just became a new father for the first time, so obviously there's a lot of stuff going on outside of football. So we always talk about all these things with Dele Alli and Ndombele and all these off-field issues. This is a real thing. The guy became a father for the first time. That is a massive life-changing moment that he's going through. So for me, keep him. He knows by his standards he didn't have a good season. Hopefully we see that hunger and that fire in his belly. The guy definitely works hard. You can't question his application and his work rate. But and the final product and the quality wasn't really there. But he's a very good player, so I wouldn't want to see him being sold right now.
I'm into that. I've got to say, Pat, on the father piece, many are still recovering from being a father. I am trying to 4 years on, so...
It definitely changed your life, didn't it, Rick? It definitely
100%. 100%. All that spare time. Where's Love Island gone? I'll tell you in the morning. Let's go to Jamie on this. Jay, very quickly. Dejan Kulusevski, interesting, a point that came up here. Lee, I agree with Lee on this point. Lee called him technically gifted. I also agree with Lee. He's technically gifted. Ray believes here that he's one-footed. He's so predictable on that left-hand side. He's got a lack of pace. Is that fair, Jay? What are you doing, Kulusevski? I think you did actually give us your point. But
yeah, I've already said, yeah, already keep on.
Right, fine. Jay's giving us his point. Right. Anything to change in your mind, Jay? Do you agree with that? Is he technically gifted?
Yeah, 100%. And I did actually see a point in the comments. Obviously, one thing he loves to do and he is brilliant at is kind of cutting in and putting in a wicked cross. And one thing that we have really lacked is kind of that vocal point up front. And I wonder whether, if we were to sign an out-and-out striker, would all of a sudden Kulusevski become a lot more, vital to the team and a lot more effective? I probably think he would, and I think a lot of players would. I think it was pretty crazy actually last season that we didn't have a real recognised centre forward. I mean, obviously Richarlison is there, but unfortunately wasn't fit enough. But yeah, I think if you were to add a centre forward, I think you'd see instant improvement. I mean, I remember actually when Richarlison was fit, I think one of the goals that we did score, I think it was at Nottingham Forest. I think it was Kulusevski whipping one in and Richarlison. So maybe we need that vocal point, and maybe Richarlison might be still the answer. I still think he could be the answer, as we'll probably get on to. But maybe if we were to add a more consistent threat up top, then we'll see.
I also just want to say, for those that are saying that's just because you're a father, I want to wonder how many people say that are a father.
Mate, it's mental. Like, I mean, I hear what you lot are saying because they're professionals and they should this and that. But the reality is these are human beings. They have work schedules and they have times that they need to switch off and this and that, just like everyone else. And if you're if you got a newborn child that is screaming and crying at all times of the night, it's going to affect you. The fact is, when you have a baby, your life changes, the perspective, the way you look at things change. There's a lot going on and you still got to get out there and deliver week in and week out. There's no hiding. So of course it's going to affect your performances.
Amen.
Come on, man. You guys need to like.
Thank you, Pat, for the battle in the Fathers Brigade there. I tell you. Thank you, Pat. Come on, Pat.
As much as I loved Spurs and I'm harsh on these players, sometimes you have to be a bit more kinder and be realistic. Yeah, they're human beings, just like all the rest of us. Yeah, they're very talented at what they do. They're amazing at what they do, but they can have off days and off years, and it happens. So I don't know. Agree.
Totally agree. Right, we've got to rattle through these. We're keeping Decky. I think, look, correct me wrong here, guys. We've got to fly through these. I think those that we are summoning to the transfer market, and some of them wrong here, guys, we are going to be summoning Manos Solomon, that he played for him. Ultimately, not a minute after that knee operation in September, which required 2 follow-up surgeries to fix the further issues. I think for Spurs, they've got to have players that are available and be able to play football and not have the issues that we've seen in terms of the injuries. So I think for the right offer, I think we'd all probably agree and correct me wrong here, guys, if Solomon is going to be going. I think I can see nods there across the team. Tell me if I'm wrong here, guys. I can see nods in the green room. Brian Hill missed the start of the season under Ange and made 12 appearances, including 2 starts. Never really grabbed the opportunity. And one that we did see for him, Brighton, I believe, were interested in the January window. He opted to stay and didn't really feature ultimately for that. One that I think we can agree, guys, and give me some nods if we are here. Jamie Donnelly, fantastic double trophy winning season for the under-21s. I think, are we all in agreement? I think we can see nods here. That guy needs a loan. We are seeing nods in the green room. Sorry, it sounds like a bit of an auction show. We've just got so much to cram in. So what we are trying to do is go through all these players. So there will be guys that I'm asking these guys about more of a kind of auction basis, that we're just looking for nods and heads of approval. And I'll keep saying it, guys. Please, please, please. We want to hear from you guys in the comments after the show. Who do you want to sell? Who do you want to keep? Who do you want to loan? Please get involved. Please send us in your comments. We're intrigued to know. Stephen Bergvall, I think I called him Lucas earlier. My apologies, Stephen. He was confirmed for Tottenham to be joining, of course, ahead of this window. He'll be a Spurs player on July the 1st. And just to give everybody an update of where we are in terms of transfer news on midfielders, we know Spurs are being heavily linked with Conor Gallagher. We understand, according to The Athletic and the Standard, Spurs are expected to make a bid imminently for Conor Gallagher. Whether that will be enough We'll wait to see. We know there's genuine heavy interest from Aston Villa, but it's worth me pointing out there, Aston Villa do have their own FFP concerns. Whether Villa can get Conor Gallagher over the line, you'd wonder, can they also keep Jacob Ramsey? One to keep an eye on. So that is by far no means done. One that will drag on for sure. In terms of other midfielders Spurs are being linked with heavily, you might put him in the forward category. That is Eberici Eze. There has been genuine links to Eze, but nothing of really strong sources at the moment in terms of anything to really suggest that a move is on the cards, but a player that Spurs genuinely do like and one to keep an eye on for sure as this window progresses. We are going to turn our attention to the forwards at Spurs. There's a lot to get through, so we're going to rattle through this as we can. Like I say, we've integrated some of the midfielders in there as well. In terms of, I think, the big one that will cast the Spurs, which I'll come on to a second, Dane Scarlett. I want to see if we can get nods on here. Dane Scarlett, very quickly, guys. Are we keeping, selling, or loaning? That's probably not the greatest one to start with, because I think that's actually a genuine debate question. Pat is giving me an L to that. That's a loan. That's decent. I love that. Bit of that's easy to deal with. Can I get an L from you boys? Is that that's a Jamie? Give me it. We've all got L's. We've got L's going on. Okay, we're loaning Dane Scarlett. Brilliant. These shows would be so much quicker if we did them in miming, really. We should do that moving forward. Be a lot better. We did realise with the live show we did, we found more people listening to us when we weren't actually on air than when we was on air. So maybe that's the way forward. We just don't talk anymore, which would be fantastic. Would save me 2 hours, and I'm sure the boys as well. And we could actually get a life in after this show, which would be superb. Right, in terms of other players, Elo Veliz, young player, got 41 minutes across the 8 appearances last season, did grab a goal for the club in that defeat to Brighton. I'm seeing L's across the board here, which is another loan. We've got Lee giving me an L, Pat giving me an L, and Jamie's trying to give me a YMCA over there. What are you giving me, Jay? He's giving me an L as well. So we're all saying a loan. So we're loaning Dane Scarlett, we're loaning Elo Veliz. And very quickly, Mikey Moore. Got to bring Mikey Moore into it. He obviously, of course, featured a couple of times off the bench. 16 years old. We've got in L's across the board.
You can't loan him. He's too young. You can't loan a 16-year-old. You can't.
Oh, man. So he's got to play with the under-21s then, I guess. So,
yeah, you've got to keep him in and around the first team or with the 21. You can't.
What's the age you can go on loan? What, 18, 17?
I think it's 18. Yeah, I don't know, but you can't loan Mikey Moore out for another season.
I just watched that there. We just broke the L spell. We had 3 on a go there until Mackie came in.
Yeah, it was on the roll.
I don't know.
Thank you, Jay. We've got Jay giving us explorative there in terms of different miming attributes you can give us here. So we're saying we're gonna keep Mikey Moore and integrate him still with the youth and keep him getting games. Fine, okay. Let's go into a player that could really heavily debate this show, and we're coming towards the course of the end of this one. I'm thankful to say, because it's a long show. I know conscious of time. Let's get on to Richarlison. 4th time I said that in this show. Richarlison. Right, let's discuss where we are in terms of Richie's future. A mixed start to the season. But then at one point, Richie bagged 12 goals, really in a period where ultimately he had 4 assists across the 31 Premier League games. I know there's been heavy criticism over his defensive work, but ultimately, look, from set pieces, he is a threat. He often does go under the radar by his own standards. It was a better season than the previous one. You can't argue with that. But again, injuries really giving him a negative end to a season. Boys, this one could cause a debate, so we want to try and get this one succinctly as possible. Richarlison, are we keeping, selling, or loaning? Macca will open up with you. Richie, what are we doing?
Keep 100%, 60 million quid. You're not going to get that back. And, as a backup striker, 11 goals in the Premier League, 4 assists, not a bad return as a backup striker. But we have to go and buy it. I'm just saying this as a caveat, team. We have to go and buy an out-and-out number 9. And I want Richarlison to challenge that person. And like Pat said earlier, with Kulusevski, you can't just keep selling people. Like we've already sold Kane. We've already sold Kane, our star player. Oh, look, Donna's on the screen there. You sanctioned us selling Harry Kane.
But he reckons you look a lot younger than what you used to, so you're not going to go out too much, are you?
Very nice. I'm just angry at the fact that we've got to go out and buy another striker that we already had one. And that's what frustrates the hell out of me. So we're going to talk in a minute about an Ivan Toney and this person. That's Richarlison. At the end of the day, you're talking about being a father and whatever. He's had major issues. He made 2 major issues around his back. Then he had surgery. Now the injuries again. He had issues around his mental health, and he still bagged 11 goals and 4 assists. And if he's our backup number 9, that's absolutely phenomenal. I'd 100% keep him.
Okay, interesting. Jay, big company from Saudi tomorrow, 60 million. What are we doing?
I mean, some of these offers you're giving me are very tempting, and if an offer like that was to come in, I would sell him because I think you get better.
I just love talking about money coming into the probably Saudi
Yeah,
clubs. Like it's actually going to happen.
That was my point. You ain't going to get 60 million for him. You ain't going to get 60 million.
No, unfortunately not. No, I think Richarlison's 100% good enough to be Spurs' number one option. He showed that last season. It's just that I think his reputation has, been tarnished because of those injuries. I think he is more than good enough to be a top Premier League striker. Just needs to stay fit, and I don't know. It's tricky. I don't know. Maybe it was a bit of misfortune last season with some injuries, and maybe once you suffer one injury, you're then compensating, and then you get into a bad spell. I don't think it necessarily means that you're injury prone. Obviously, we saw that with Haaland. He had that spell in Dortmund where, we had a bad season with injuries. Everyone kind of said, "Oh, he's so injury prone," and he's hardly obviously had an injury since he's come to Manchester City. So maybe that's the case with Richie, and hopefully he's not a player that is injury prone. But on his day, I think he's a superb player. I think Lee's right. We certainly, we can't take any risks with this one. We have to have a centre forward next season. We have to have a top centre forward. And after the way Richarlison's was last season, I think we have to bring someone else in. So we need a second striker.
Okay, Patty, let's come to you very quickly on Richie. Where are we at? Again, there's that element being fired at him that he misses far too many games for a top centre forward that Spurs need to have in their ranks. Where are you, Patty, on that for you?
Very unfortunate with injuries, like the boys are saying. But if we're honest as a fan base, we have looked much better with Richarlison in the team. There's even times when he was just coming back off an injury and then he come on against Liverpool or even Chelsea, whenever it was, and we looked a much better unit. Son looks much better when he's got a focal point to aim at and obviously pass the ball to. And 11 goals, 4 assists in 28 games or whatever it is, 23 games, sorry.
Yep.
28 games. 28 games, 11 goals, 4. That's not a bad return. Obviously, he doesn't have to be our number one. We need a much better striker than him to come in with. But he's more than capable to come off the bench or start certain games. He's a good player. Just unfortunate with the injuries. But yeah, keep and obviously upgrade in that position.
Okay, we've got to keep across the ball for Richarlison. Guys, I need to just quickly ask you about Troy Parrott. Look, before previously struggling to find the back of the net on a regular basis in his loan spells at Millwall, Ipswich, MK Dons and Preston North End, his time in the Eredivisie has proved to be a huge success for all parties concerned. Although the team he played for finished 16th in the league, and Morenci relegated in the end of season playoffs, he actually contributed with 17 goals and 5 assists in 32 games. And forgive me, Maka, because he's been telling me about this really for the last couple of weeks, that I think if you compare him to someone like Santiago Jimenez, I think Jimenez has only got a few more goals in him, Maka. Please correct me if I'm wrong here and come back in. And many are driving that bargain, thank you, Maka, that ultimately they want Jimenez to be coming in as maybe Spurs' main central striker, whereas Troy ultimately has done superb in that campaign. And I think a lot will come down to whether pre-season wise, if we'll get a regular run of games. So maybe we'll say, based on pre-season, let's go around very quickly. Start with you, Patty. Troy Parrott, are we keeping, selling and loaning? Does it all come down to pre-season? Is it fair to judge a player on pre-season? 6 games, what are we doing?
You know what? It's a tough one because he had a brilliant campaign. But when I look at him, I'm like, will he ever make it at Spurs? And I just don't think so. So how many times can we loan the guy out? I would probably...
We did say something Harry Kane.
I'd say keep but loan, but this has to be the last time. Okay. Realistically, he's 22 now. I think 22, 23. So yeah, 22. So it is getting to the age where he needs to be a regular in the Spurs team if he's ever going to make it. But he did have a good season. Keep but loan for me. But this is the last year.
Yeah, I mean, Jay, I just want to pick up on a point that I said to Pat there. I just said Harry Kane in there because of the amount of loans that Harry had. Obviously, Harry flourished in the Europa League, which is a competition that we're in, Jay. Is there an argument that we keep Troy Parrott? We see what he's like in the Europa League, given that goal-scoring record of last season, or are you the same mindset as Pat? Would you just stick him back out on loan again?
No, well, I'd like to see him given an opportunity in pre-season. Obviously, he is someone who is very talented. We saw that at youth level, and maybe it just takes for... that chance to go out and play regular football. Obviously played at a good level as well. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what offers we do come in, that do arrive, because ultimately he's gone to a good league and scored a lot of goals. But oh god, that comment's distracted me.
Will you leave Lee alone? He's married.
I'm getting
sick of this now, Becca.
Some players. No, it'd be interesting to see what happens with Troy. I think, if a good offer was to come in for him, I think that now would probably be the time to cash on him. But look, let's have a look at him in pre-season, because we know that he can be a very talented player. As I said, at youth level, fantastic. So I'm interested to see what happens with him, and definitely want to see him given a chance in pre-season. So at the moment, I probably would keep him. I'd keep him and have a look in pre-season. So yeah,
you're too early to trigger the loan option, Jay. At the moment, want to see him in pre-season.
There might be an argument to sell as well, because if after a really good goal scoring season, you could get a good offer for him. So let's see.
I've got to be careful because Paddy's in the comments now and he said if we sell Parrott it means we hate the Irish. Paddy, don't get us started. We love the Irish. Let's go to Lee. Lee, bearing in mind Paddy's comment there, what you're doing, is that going to sway your mind?
Yeah, I think we should give him a 10-year contract. No, I mean, to be honest, I would keep him for the first 6 months in and around. Like, have a look at him in the preseason. Like, he's only 22. I mean, I just want to say that again. He's only 22. Like, it feels like he's really old because he's been around for a while. If he can convert that, maybe this is the last loan that he's needed, like the Harry Kane loans. If you go and have a look at Harry Kane's loans, I don't think Kane out on loan was brilliant. He had a foul. You could argue he had a foul loan at Leicester. He didn't do particularly well, did he? I think it was. Did he go to Norwich? I think he might have even gone to Norwich.
Millwall.
Millwall. I think he was pretty good at Millwall. But the point being is that at some point, these lads are going to have to go and play some good football. The point I make about Jimenez, and I know you want to wrap up, but it's a big talking point, big show. The reality of the situation is Jimenez, right? He's a year older than Troy. You don't know how he's going to adapt into the English, into the UK, into the English Premier League and all that sort of stuff. You don't know that. He scored 6 more goals in the league than Troy did, right? 6 more goals. He's not homegrown. He's not club trained. He's not one of our own. Why would we not want to give Troy a go first? Do you see where I'm coming from? And him is going to spass us 45 million. I just think that I'm not saying that he's good. The thing that I would say about Troy quickly is how does he play? Is he the type? We talked earlier about nice guy and all that sort of stuff, Ben Davis, but he can't play Andrew's system. Can Troy play Andrew's system up front?
Yeah, we don't know.
That's why I would keep him around, as Jamie said, keep him around in the summer. And then, if he trains, I remember when Conte had everyone puking at the side of the pitch. Do you remember that? And Ali Gold, friend of the show, obviously was out there. And he was saying the only person that could keep up the whole fitness thing was Troy. Do you remember? He said he was winning all the races and all that. Yeah. And everyone else is puking on the side of the pitch. So, I don't know. He's got something. I think it's exciting. I think this might be his time. Let's back for Troy. Let's keep him around. Okay. And if we loan him again, we loan him in January, perhaps.
Yep. So on this one, Pat is in the minority. We are going to be saying, I think I'll be saying keep based on the fact that we need to see what's to come. Final player, guys. I don't expect many to disagree on this one, but we'll see. Captain of the football club, of course, a player that has delivered for goals and assists this season. That is, of course, of Heung-min Son. I have to say, I have seen some murmurs that have been disappointed by Sonny's overall contribution to the season. A guy that's contributed 27 goal involvements in 36 matches for Spurs across the season. Again, ending the club as the top goal scorer. You could add another 9 goals and 3 assists for South Korea if you want, in terms of his overall contribution as a whole, both club and for country. I think he'll argue again that it wasn't his best season by far. Again, you had the fact that in there he had an international tournament as well. Very, very quickly, guys, Heung-min Son to wrap us up on this epic squad audit show. Are we going to get any surprises in here? Let's start with Patty. Patty, Sonny, keeping, selling, or loaning?
Keep. I'm actually offended you're asking me this question.
We have to ask it, bro. It's
no, I'm joking. No, put it into context. In the Premier League, there was only 4 players with more goal contributions than him. Cole Palmer had 33 goals and assists. Erling Haaland had 32. Ollie Watkins, 32. Mo Salah, 28. And Phil Foden and Son were tied on 27 goals and assists. So when you look at the caliber of players that he's in and around, the guy's world class. Still performed at a top level. He had more goals and assists than Saka, Isaac, Bowen, Solanke, Mateta, Gordon, Havertz, Alvarez, all the guys that people,
only had 2 penalties.
Exactly. So
had 9.
And you know what annoys me and pisses me off is that if we actually had a striker who was available and that Son wasn't played out of position, he would have easily had way more goals and assists than what he had. Yeah, it's a no-brainer for me. With a competent striker next season, or hopefully a fit Richarlison for much more, and Son not going to Asia Cup, playing out of position, you'll see Sonny even better than he was. So it's definitely a keep. And I think even our own fans take advantage of how good he is because we're so used to it now. But the guy's quality, man.
Yep. I'm going to add to that as well, coming over to Jay if I can, Jay. Of all Son's goals, only 2 of them are penalties, which tells you a lot about, again, just how many of them were scored from open play. Jamie, easy one. Sonny, what are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's someone that I would, long term, I think probably moving back to left wing now. I think that let's say experiment of playing him as a centre forward just hasn't really worked. He's not really that kind of that presence. He's not that natural striker. Obviously, finishing wise, I don't think there's many better players in Europe. He might even be the very best finisher in Europe. Can finish with both feet. You'd back him in any opportunity, obviously, apart from when he's one-on-one against Manchester City. No, he's
good lad,
quality, and I think he's a player long term. I think we will be seeing as a left wing. Obviously, been smashing it with South Korea recently, and in their friendlies as well, look really good. Yes, although I think they have been. I don't know the teams they've been playing, but I've seen some nice highlights from him. So yeah, mate, absolute club legend, and he will be the one if I do not see Sonny lifting a trophy, that will be the one that proper kills me. So look, let's look for Sonny next season. His loyalty's been unbelievable, and hopefully he gets so many players that gone through our club that deserve something to show for it. But Sonny is the absolute one I want to see win a trophy. So yeah, 100%. Obviously,
Leader, come to you. Let's get your take on this as well. And just to throw it in there, when you have got the likes of Eze being linked alongside the potential of having Sonny in that team next season, and you're looking at a genuine focal point number 9, how much would that excite you seeing Sonny on one wing, Eze on the other, and having a genuine number 9 down the middle, which I know many are suggesting it could be Ivan Toney. I know a player that does really, I think, split the fan base in terms of attitude, behaviours. From the interviews that he's given, it seems to suggest that maybe Spurs wouldn't have been his preference or choice. But look, ultimately, it's a footballer, and I think we know that in Spurs' squad, there's a lot of players there, or some of the players there that aren't Spurs fans. They do, unfortunately, in their personal life, maybe support rivals. And that's the fact of it. We had Kulusevski pictured out of a statue outside the Emirates, where we want to say that or not on air. It's the truth. You can't get away from it. So not every player we can sign can be a Spurs player. But back to Sonny, how important would he be, Lee, for still the future of the football club? And how, again, would someone like Eze come in, really get the best out of Sonny, as Jamie says there, deploy him to his maybe natural position?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think what we found out this year is Sonny will play anywhere. I think my big question is, would you play him as a left back? Would you rock Sonny up as a left back?
I thought we were going to close this show on a really easy
semi-final. Maybe in the cup semi-final versus Chelsea, might do that. Yeah, nice one, Poch.
Oh my god.
No, look, I mean, I think that Sonny's a no-brainer. Play him as left winger, 100%. But actually, when you talk about Eze there, you talk about Ivan Toney, talk about these other players, Kulusevski. What Pat said earlier, you want to be looking at the bench and going, wow, we've got Richarlison on the bench, Kulusevski on the bench, Werner on the bench, whatever, to come on to replace the likes of Eze, who started, Johnson, who started, Sonny, who started, Toney, who started. That's a completely different feel. We're not buying people like Eze to replace Son. We're buying Eze to bolster the squad with Son. And then if Eze keeps Son out of the team, or Son keeps Eze out of the team, that's the reality, right? Or which way. I think signing Eze is just, it's mouth-watering. He can play him from the left. He can come in from the right. He can come as a number 10. He can make things happen. He's the sort of player like Maddison does as well. I don't think Maddison gets enough credit for this. I think Maddison was the most fouled player in the Premier League last season, along with the likes of Jack Grealish. But imagine Maddison and Eze drawing players in and around them, like calling fouls and then people running in behind or causing spaces. That's the biggest disappointment I had with Tottenham Hotspur Football Club and Ange Ball this year, is that we didn't do that. We were very structured and rigid. And I think we still had a lot of cobwebs to blow off, essentially, from being structured and rigid on previous previous managers. So even and that's why I'm excited for next season. So Son's a no-brainer, and I think this show shows that there is a lot of work to do. So when we're really harsh and critical on where we are, with the fact that we got more points than last season, we scored more goals than last season, we went 5th rather than 8th than last season. But all of the things that are moving in the right direction, you've got to reflect and put all that in context. We've just sat here and said that he's got to sell at least 15 players.
Yeah, I think on that point, as we look to close this show, Lee, do me a favour. I'm just going to run through those that we've said we want to sell, we're going to loan, we're going to buy. If Lee can just keep a very quick tally for me, or you guys can keep a very quick tally, I'd really appreciate it. Out of the goalkeepers, we have said that if the right offer comes in for Fraser Forster, we would let Forster go. We know there's a homegrown issue there, but we're saying on Fraser Forster, if we can find a solution to that homegrown issue, we would let Forster go. In terms of our defenders that we've got, Mickey van der Ven we're keeping, Dragashin we're keeping, Romero we're keeping, Porro we're keeping. Destiny Udogie we're keeping, but we are selling Emerson Royale. We're selling Ben Davies if the right offer comes in. Jed Spence, Joe Rodon, Sergio Reguilon. We are loaning Ashley Phillips is what the crew have decided here. Midfielders, we are going to be keeping Yves Bissouma. We're going to be keeping James Maddison. We're going to be keeping Pat Matassar. We're going to be keeping Rodrigo Bentancur. Of course, we've got Bergvall coming in, but we would allow Skip to go for the right offer. We'd allow Højbjerg to leave this summer. We want Lo Celso to leave this summer. We know Ndombele, as we've discussed, is going to be on his way out. As we know, in the coming days, his contract will be terminated. Giovanni Lo Celso, we've touched upon again. We would let him go for the right offer, despite Jamie's really, really hard-stricken battling approach. And he's still shaking his head in the green room now in terms of that. And as we go to our forwards and attackers to close this show, we know Heung-min Son keeping. Spurs legend as things stands. Richarlison, an overwhelming opinion to keep him as we are. We're going to be selling Brian Hill. We would be also selling Manos Solomon. We'd be loaning Elo Veliz. We'd be keeping Brennan Johnson. We're going to be keeping Dejan Kulusevski. Timo Werner, another separate debate. Thank God we haven't got to do it on this show. We'll save it for 12 months' time for the next squad audit. Jamie not happy in the background, shaking his head, but Timo Werner is here for another 12 months and won't make the cut of this discussion on this show. But look, it's going to be a busy, busy window. And as I come to Lee there for the overall figures on the doors, Lee, what are we doing? What are we selling? Who are we loaning? What we decided? Who are we keeping?
There's a few players that we did discuss that weren't even on that list, like the Troy Parrots or whatever. But, we're keeping 14 people. 14.
Wow.
So we've got a squad of 14. We're loaning 2, and then we're selling 12.
Okay.
Right.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's a lot of work to do. And actually, then you look at the others like the Dane Scarlets and the Troy Parrots and whatever else that we talked about. There's a lot. And then you've got the players in the academy to come back in and all that sort of stuff as well. So the reality is that you're looking at working with a first team squad as we talk of 14 players. So we've got to go and get 6 or 7 players in, ain't we? Really, in the summer. 6 or 7.
We're fine for Europe. We're fine for Europe. What are you on about? 14 players will be fine.
Exactly. I mean, no. If you get 6 in, as an example, that takes you to 20, and then you probably want another 3 maybe through the academy or the youth. So I mean, you're looking at 6 or 7 players, aren't you?
Listen. Thank you so much. Macca with the figures on the doors there. As King Hoddle says, excellent audit. Send Levy the transcript. Well, listen, Donna's been listening and watching this show in the comments. Donna Cullen in the show. So listen, that's gone straight to Donna, who will file it off to Daniel. And I'm sure, listen, as always, Last Word on Spurs' opinions are kept very, very important and ultimately are taken by the highest of regard. So we expect to see that audit being played full out this summer. What we got to worry about. I want to say a massive thank you to this excellent panel as we veer on nearly 2 hours, which wasn't the plan. It was a big discussion. Patty, where can everybody find Chatty Patty and what he's doing? Thank you as always, my man. We'll be having you back through the summer. Pat, where can we find you?
Yeah, and I loved it. Thank you for everyone that tuned in and listened, all the comments. I hope everyone that listens back to this tomorrow during the week. Yep. Again, like Ricky's saying, put your comments in, still put them in, even though it's not live, because then we can take a look back. And obviously take a look back maybe in 12 months, half a year, and see how right we were, see how wrong we were, have a laugh and a giggle about it and all of that stuff. But yeah, Patrick Tyrant, as it sounds, PatrickTyrant on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And yeah, that's it, man. Always a pleasure being on. Love to Ricky, Lee, and obviously Jamie. And love to everyone that tuned in as well. Bless you all.
Thank you so much. Bless you. And likewise, Pat, mate. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon. The one-stop shop for the transfer window. It's Jamie Brown over at the Daily Hotspur. That's why he's popping back up. You can find Jamie, of course, giving you all the latest news on Spurs' transfer dealings over at the Daily Hotspur. It's a must-follow account for those on X. Jay, what we coming up, my man? What we got to come, apart from you being on here?
Yeah,
I'm doing that David Brent line now. What we got to cover? Lots of men.
No, obviously a great show. Obviously, fantastic panel. Really, really great to be on with all you boys. But yeah, obviously, as we've seen and just discussed, lots of work to be done this summer. Obviously, the window opens in exactly a week's time, I believe. But the Euros does start, and so that's obviously going to hold quite a bit of business back. I mean, a lot of players we have been linked with obviously are in the England squad at the moment. So I can imagine that it's going to be a bit of time before we see some real incomings. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's a lovely comment to lend this on with Jamie. Jamie is what Michael Bublé is to Christmas as to when the transfer window opens. What a way to put it. We'll leave on that comment. What a comment that is for Jamie. That is. Jay, thank you so much. Jay will be featuring hopefully heavily across the summer, working around a very hectic and physical schedule, as always with Jamie. It's always active, quite literally in his day job. So we'll be working around Jamie for that. Jay, thank you, mate. Loved having you back on. Macca, to close it with you. You gave us the figures on the doors there. Mate, as we know, we've got loads of stuff planned for Last Word on Spurs throughout the summer. It's fair to say, Macca, there's a lot of work to do, and we are just getting started based on this audit, right? Just getting started.
And I think that's puts into context, doesn't it? When everything's all said and done, and the emotion out of losing or drawing a game that you should win and all that's not there, when you can actually look at it and what I would call work on the business rather than in the business, essentially, you can see that audit's there to see. We've got some work to do, but I think we're doing it. I think we're under Ange, under this new recruitment, since Paratici in the background's been cooking. I think the recruitment has been virtually there or thereabouts, to be honest. So I'm looking forward to a good summer. I'm in Milton Keynes tomorrow. I'm in Chelmsford on Tuesday. I'm in Cardiff on Wednesday. I'm on tour. I
told you, this guy is Eddie Earn in Spurs format. He really is. He's on the go.
Another mad week, but you can find me on X, you can find me on LinkedIn, you can find me on Instagram. Just crack on, let's get involved.
I was saying, we've got obviously this impersonator of Donna Cullen. That's it, Donna joining us on the show here. Mr. McQueen, you're a fantastic decision maker. Help for me deciding Mr. Skip's role for next season. Can I just say, we're going to direct everybody to Lee McQueen in the South Stand for next season when Oliver Skip rocks up. 252, right back next season. Go and find Lee and personally thank him for being tier 1 again. He was tier 1 on the manager. Go and find him for being tier 1 in relation to Oliver Skip's exposition. As many says here, Donna Cullen is going to be right back for Lee for you, Mr. McQueen, in the future. Guys, I want to say a massive thank you. Cracking show, cracking panel. Lots of work to do from myself, from Patty, from Jamie, from Lee. We've been the Last Word on Spurs. Keep those notifications on. The window's coming. Keep the faith. Thank you so much. Nearly 5,000 of you watch this show live. From us all, from Lee, from Pat, from Jamie. Get those comments in. And as always, come on, you Spurs.